This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. The new way Wyoming wakes up. Cowboy State Daily Show with Jake. It's Friday, finally Friday, October 25th. Good morning. Today we're going to talk about continued discussions, how Grizzly Bear 399 lived, how she died, and where her body may be going next. That debate will include open phone lines. We want to hear what you want to say. The Sagebrush Rebellion continues. Wyoming lawmakers, Hageman, Gordon as well, want to wrest land away from the feds. This has been an ongoing battle. We'll talk to our own Rod Miller to make sense of it. Legislature proposes to show you a live scoreboard during the legislative session on how your lawmakers vote. That should make things exciting. For the second time in 5 days, a kidnapped teen girl is rescued on Wyoming highways. The Fremont County coroner wants somebody to claim the body of a drunk driver who was killed in DuBois last month. And Cheyenne Police Department says they're not racist. They want a dismissal of a lawsuit. All these stories and more coming up on the Cowboys State Daily Show with Jake. Let's get to Wendy Core's local news.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Friday, October 25th. I'm Wendy Core, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, brought to you by 4 Wyoming PAC. 4 Wyoming PAC says this November, Wyoming will vote to allow residential homes to be taxed at a lower, fairer rate, even the playing field, and give families a much-needed break. 4 Wyoming PAC wants you to vote yes on Amendment A. A nameless bear, given a research number, launched onto the world stage doing what bears do, having babies and protecting them. During an interview with award-winning journalist and author Todd Wilkinson on Cowboy State Daily's morning show with Jake Nichols on Thursday, Todd spoke about how Grizzly 399, the 28-year-old mother of 18 known cubs, captured the public's attention over the years. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck highlights just one of the many stories about the legendary grizzly.
There was an incident in 2007 where she had her cubs with her and they were eating on an elk carcass near Jackson Lodge, and apparently a man walked out and was wandering on a trail, but there had been warnings about not going on the trails, and he ended up getting bitten by 399 and her cubs. He told authorities later that he didn't want anything done to the bear because she was doing her thing as a mama bear, and the wildlife officials, the park officials, decided that they were not going to do anything. If the park had made that decision, then 399 wouldn't have become the 399 that we all know and love.
The most popular bear mama in the world was killed Tuesday night when she was hit by a car in Lincoln County. The local sheriff's office has deemed the incident an accident and didn't ticket the driver. Wildlife photographer Kelly Ogilvie learned that Grizzly 399 was dead Wednesday afternoon. After the initial shock wore off, there was only one thing on her mind: the status and location of Grizzly 399's body. Ogilvie spoke to Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi about what she and others would like to see done with the body of the world-famous mama bear.
They don't want the head and the paws to be cut off like that grizzly up in Gardner back in July. They don't want the body to end up in a dump. They want 399 to be treated with dignity and respect. The telling thing is, everyone that I've spoken to, everywhere that you go, when a bear gets hit by a car, this isn't the first bear that's gotten hit by a car or been poached or anything like that. It's a carcass, so it's the disposal of a carcass. Everyone's saying we need to be dignified and respectful of 399's body, which just shows the emotional investment that everybody has in this bear.
Ultimately, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will decide what happens to Grizzly 399. Regardless of what happens to the bear's body, the unanimous consensus is that people want to be informed throughout the decision-making process. Well, for the second time in 5 days, Wyoming law enforcement Thursday rescued a teen girl kidnapped in another state. The Cheyenne Police Department, with help from the Wyoming Highway Patrol, recovered the teen girl reported as a runaway from Westminster, Colorado. Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson reports that the girl was riding with an 18-year-old who led law enforcement on a high-speed chase up and down I-25 near Cheyenne.
They went several miles north on I-25. Then, for some reason, a state trooper said they really can't fathom. He turned around and went back south and right into the waiting pursuit that was behind him with the state troopers, the Cheyenne Police, Laramie County Sheriff's Office. They used spike strips to get him stopped.
Thursday's highway stop was the second in 5 days in which a Wyoming highway stop ended with the safe recovery of a kidnapped teen girl. On Sunday, Highway Patrol troopers and Rawlins Police stopped a registered sex offender from Nebraska who was suspected of abducting a 13-year-old girl from her home in South Dakota. U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, Governor Mark Gordon, and 26 members of the Wyoming legislature filed briefs this week urging the U.S. Supreme Court to hear a lawsuit brought by the state of Utah that could result in more than 200 million acres of federal lands being turned over to western states. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the argument is in regards to the federal government's ownership of land in western states, which, according to the Utah lawsuit, denies them equal statehood and representation when compared to other states with less federal acreage.
They believe the ownership of lands that are not being used for national parks, monuments, or tribal lands is unconstitutional and should be returned to the state. Even though it doesn't directly affect Wyoming immediately with the lawsuit, the result of the lawsuit could absolutely have effect on Wyoming as far as overturning the BLM's right to manage and control these public lands.
Some have called the lawsuit the latest chapter in the Sagebrush Rebellion, a revolt against federal land ownership that arose in the 1970s. The treasurer of the Thermopolis Future Farmers of America fundraising committee admitted to stealing more than $15,000 from the group. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that 36-year-old Cody Stewart now faces 11 felony counts of forgery and 1 of felony theft, all of which allegedly occurred between autumn of 2021 and September of this year.
She's been president of this FFA alumni committee for more than 4 years. And the other committee members got together and met with the police chief. And according to court documents, they splayed out all of their bank records and showed just this depletion, with Stewart allegedly writing checks to herself. These require 2 signatures, but the 11 of the dozen felony charges she faces, say that she forged the president's signature repeatedly. Court documents say that she completely depleted this account from thousands in the black to down in the negative.
Each charge is punishable by a maximum of 10 years in prison and $10,000 in fines. Stewart is set for a preliminary hearing October 30th in Thermopolis Circuit Court. Well, Cowboy State Daily is visiting coffee klatches across Wyoming before the election to see what topics are being discussed. The Fox News All-Stars in Lander is one of the state's oldest groups. Politics dominates the conversation, mostly leaning right, but not all the time, reports Bill Sniffen, who's been a member of this group for over 50 years.
I've been going to it for over 50 years. And back when we started, it was probably 50-50 Democrat and Republican. But just like the state of Wyoming, it's shifted more to where now it's pretty much all Republican, very much. It was interesting when we talked about it, Stan Cannon, who used to be press secretary for Al Simpson, he says, "Whoa, folks, I'm not going to vote for Trump." We all thought, really? And his reasoning was that he was one of only 15 congressional staffers that had privileges to go on the Senate floor. And he said, boy, after January 6th, he said, I'm never going to vote for Trump. So anyway, even though we still are the Fox News All-Stars, we did have one dissenter. He didn't say whether he was going to vote for Kamala or not, but he just wasn't going to vote for Trump.
And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day.
Well, after a blustery Thursday where we saw a little bit of mountain snow and some showers and wind on the plains, well, things will be a lot more settled as we head through this Friday. In fact, today through the weekend looks great. One more great fall weekend coming up, whether it's high school football later on today and this evening or the Cowboys Friday afternoon and evening in Laramie. The weather's going to be about as good as you're going to get it in late October. Now, this is all just before some big changes coming next week. Our confidence is high of rain and snow overspreading the state, especially late Monday night into Tuesday and Wednesday. Hunters and livestock interests and travelers early next week will need to keep an eye on the weather.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 15 seconds with more news.
Comparing your home to a luxury resort is like comparing apples to oranges. So why are they being taxed the same? Amendment A allows our homes to be taxed at a lower, fairer rate than commercial properties. Vote yes on Amendment A.
An effort to limit press photography at the Wyoming legislature has been scrapped for now. On Thursday, the Select Committee on Legislative Facilities, Technology, and Process voted unanimously to recommend not enacting a policy that would prohibit photo and video journalists from entering the halls that run next to the House and Senate floors. Cowboy State Daily's Leah Wolfson reports that the proposal had originally passed at the committee's meeting in September, but was brought back up on Thursday after a large outcry from the public.
The proposal was originally brought as a way to allow lawmakers to have more privacy at the Capitol and basically close off the hallways that surround the chambers that to some seem should not be open to the press. This would have been a major blow to press access at the Wyoming legislature. Many people spoke on behalf of rejecting this proposal on Thursday, and it seemed that the committee had already changed its mind about it even before the discussion had started.
Senator Chris Rothfuss of Laramie, who originally supported the recommendation, said the substantive purpose of the policy change was far outweighed by the public's concern on the issue. The Cheyenne Police Department is asking a federal judge to dismiss a black man's racial discrimination lawsuit, saying the man didn't stay within the rules for making that claim. In Gene Clemenson's lawsuit, he claims he was harassed and falsely accused of drunk driving after making a haphazard stop as he turned right on a red light 2 years ago. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that the police department is asking the U.S. District Court for Wyoming to dismiss his allegations, saying they don't fit the proper legal framework.
It's a lot harder to sue the government in Wyoming than anyone else. There's a set of rules you have to follow. If you don't follow those rules, you have to make certain showings. And they're saying you didn't do that. You have these bald legal assertions, and that part should be thrown out.
The department is also asking the court to remove Clemenson's request for punitive damages. And Cowboy State Daily has been running a series of stories about haunted places and ghostly experiences. On tomorrow's episode of The Roundup, we'll take a journey to some of the most haunted places and hear some of the spookiest stories in the Cowboy State. One of those stories has been told by Cowboy State Daily's executive editor, Jimmy Orr, about a ghostly encounter he had in 1996 when he was the incoming press secretary for Governor Jim Gehringer.
There was a wall that just had the photo of every governor in Wyoming. And they were all the same. They all were the photo and the glass pane over it and everything. And I noticed one of the photos didn't have a glass pane. So I asked Danny about it. I said, why doesn't Alonzo Clark have glass pane on it? And he goes, it's haunted. And what do you mean? He goes, listen, we have tried to put the glass back on the pane numerous times. Whenever we do it, it falls. So he doesn't like having a glass pane over him. And so what I did is I bought a new frame for Alonzo Clark, put it over, and nothing happened. And one night, I hear a crash. True story, Wendy. I hear a crash, and I walk up to the office. It's probably about 9:30 at night or whatever. And sure enough, Alonzo Clark's photo is on the ground and glass all over the place.
You can tune in to The Roundup this weekend and you'll hear the full story and more. Thanks for tuning in to today's video newscast. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily. Want to stay in touch with what's happening around Wyoming? I'm Wendy Corr, host of the Cowboy State Daily video newscast. From Mountain View to Upton, from Jackson to Cheyenne, our reporters are out there finding and telling the stories that matter. Every day, I talk to the talented journalists who are covering the topics, issues, and people that are important to Wyomingites. And in our daily newscast, I bring you their stories. Tune in to Cowboy State Daily video news every morning, only on CowboyStateDaily.com.
All right. Let's get the day started with a sunrise photo of the day and your updated weather forecast for Wyoming today and this Friday. Got a glorious weekend ahead of us. Next weekend, when we get to Halloween, is going to be much different. So soak this one up. Enjoy it while you can. Here's your sunrise photo of the day, taken by Cheryl Dent Fulton in Worland. Cheryl sent us a photo of the day back in April that was very much like this one, just cotton candy, red sky. So I guess Cheryl Dent Fulton just attracts these glorious sunrises. She said they never fail in their beauty. Sunrise over Worland, Wyoming, captured by Cheryl Dent Fulton, who is a heck of a horsewoman, by the way. If you see Cheryl today, ask her what horse she's showing. Your updated weather forecast from Don Day. The day weather forecast: sunny, breezy throughout most of the state. In central Wyoming, sunny, highs around 63. You'll be right around 60 or low 60s in Lander and Shoshone as well. Southwest Wyoming, Evanston, Rock Springs, Kemmer. Sunny skies with highs topping out right around 60. Western Wyoming and Pinedale, Afton, LaBarge, sunny. It'll be a little foggy in the morning there in Afton. You'll be in the mid 50s in western Wyoming. Northwest Wyoming, Dubois, Jackson, and up there in Yellowstone, look for highs in the upper 50s. A little patchy fog this morning, but otherwise we'll get the sun going here in the afternoon. Maybe 50, the best we're going to do at Old Faithful in Yellowstone. In the Bighorn Basin, Thermopolis, Cody, Lovell, sunny today with highs topping out right around 60. You're in the low 60s. Buffalo, Sheridan, Claremont, you're going to head for near 60 with sunny skies today. Northeast Wyoming, Gillette, Sundance, Hewlett, also sunny. A little bit windy in the Gillette area. Highs right around 60. Eastern Plains, Torrington, Douglas, Wright, sunny skies today. After a little bit frost in the morning with highs in the mid 60s. Cheyenne, frost advisory in effect before 9. Same with you, Laramie and Pine Bluffs. Otherwise, you'll be sunny in the afternoon with highs topping out in the low 60s. South Central Wyoming, Rawlins, Saratoga, Wamsutter, sunny, breezy. The highs right around 60. Take a look at the weather map for today and see the current temperatures right now in Jackson. It's cold here. I know it is. Let me see. I think it's like 20, maybe, in Jackson. I'm going to double check that. Oh, Jackson's showing 70 degrees currently. Whoops. Yeah, something broke there. Yeah, it's about 20 in Jackson, 17 down in Bondurant. Looks like the low spot. Well, maybe not. 15 there just north of Kemmer. Yikes. Yeah, that's chilly. 19 in Hannah. You must be pretty cold. And we have a broken thermometer just north of Cheyenne as well, showing minus 18. Yeah, I doubt it. Cheyenne, you're right at freezing right now. 28 in Sheridan. 29 in Casper. Sundance, you're 39. And you are the warm spot on the weather map currently. Good for you. 19 down in Evanston. Not much going on with the travel map. You're looking pretty good everywhere you go. You got a little bit of, well, actually, they lifted that. Heading east out of Lusk, there was a little bit of wet road activity, but it looks like that's dried up. Over mountain passes, you've got, your usual stuff. If you're in the Bighorns or if you're in the Medicine Bow National Forest and traveling over mountain passes, certainly be aware of some wet conditions, if not icy conditions, but otherwise travel around the state unhindered for the most part by weather today. Looking pretty good. Dig right into our stories, and Before we do, though, I just want to line up our guests today. Yesterday, we kind of had an all-star day of guests. We had a lot of cool folks on yesterday. Today, we're looking for Paul Ulrich. Paul's going to talk to us about, a whole bunch of things. Wendy will be on today, our own Wendy Corsaley, and, of course, going to talk Wyoming Cowboys. Her latest column, by the way, is fantastic. When's the last time the Wyoming Cowboys had just one win in a season? Currently, the Pokes have one win. We got Utah State tomorrow, and I think that's our second win. But if not, when's the last time we went through a whole season with just one measly dub? Sally Ann did the research. She'll let you know, and she'll also let you know how difficult it is to find finishing sugar. Yeah, I'm right with you, Sally Ann. You just can't find a good jar of finishing sugar when you need one. Actually, it's a product of McCormick. It's what you put on your Christmas cookies. And McCormick, the spice maker, makes it, and you can't. Sally Ann says you can't find it anywhere. And I tried to go buy her some on the interwebs, and I couldn't find it either. She's right. So, yeah, she'll discuss what's wrong in Laradice and what's wrong in her kitchen at 8:30. Leo's going to join us because we've got a ton of legal, political stuff going on. He's got a lot of stories. He's going to join us in the 9 o'clock hour. And then Rod Miller's going to show up around 9:30. And we're going to go all over the place with Rod. His latest column concerns Charlie Goodnight of Texas Longhorn fame, Lonesome Dove fame, the great Texas legendary cattleman who him and Mr. Loving thought up the great idea of running cattle north to where there was better grass than Texas and then shipping them back east. What a great idea. And that born the cattle drives of the 1860s. I think they started driving cattle, if not earlier. Fascinating history. And we'll also get modern day with Rod later this morning and talk to him about this effort of Harriet Hageman, along with Governor Gordon, and along with some legislators who, for years, for decades, have been rattling their sabers at Washington, D.C., saying we want to take back some of these federal lands, particularly BLM lands. Wyoming's not the only state. Utah as well. Some 200 million acres of federal land. We're not talking about national parks here. We may be talking about forest. I have to make that more clear to myself. But we are talking about BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, and a 1976 ruling that has all this federal land, especially land that could be used for mining in Wyoming. And it's under federal whims, basically, say Gordon, Hageman, and legislators. Depending on what president is in, we can mine or not mine. And Wyoming's sick of it. Time to take back our land and use it how we want rather than have the land management decided by the White House way back there and back east. Rod Miller has special interesting knowledge of that. So, yeah, we're going to talk to Rod about that later this morning. That should be pretty interesting. Our own Greg Johnson in the Zoom room. Let's get to Greg. And, yeah, we'll talk about stories of the day. And his story, by the way, of yet another teen hostage that was resolved positively. Wyoming Highway Patrol, along with our friends in, is it Laramie County Sheriff's Office, that was assisting on that chase. Hey, Greg.
Hey, yeah, it was the Cheyenne Police were the main agency, and Highway Patrol, and Laramie County Sheriff's assisting on that. But yeah, kind of a wild week for law enforcement recovering kidnapped teenagers.
Yeah, in this instance, we're not talking about sex trafficking. I don't believe this is an 18-year-old kid from Indiana that was hanging out in the Cheyenne area, met some teenager online. Her age is not given, although we can ask Greg if he knows. But yeah, the two hooked up online. Next thing you know, they're doing the Bonnie and Clyde adventure, and he's got a warrant, by the way, back in Indiana, a non-extraditable. Yeah, and then he tried to run. You know what happens? We just queue up Bad Boys, which I finally have now. I've been. Hold on, I'm gonna get that ready. But yeah, he tried to run, and cops got something called spike strips, so that ain't gonna work.
Well, it's kind of funny. He ran. He was going north on I-25.
Right.
And then for some reason, he turned around and went back south, right where all the pursuit was waiting for him. And so they got him with the spike strip. So why he went back toward them, they don't know. But
yeah,
it worked out.
Did him a favor. Yep. Yeah, they're going to get you. Good job by Highway Patrol.
Yeah, it was it's a wild thing, but great result for the law enforcement. Apparently she was a runaway out of Colorado.
Yeah.
And it's you take a minor, it's kidnapping. That's the charge. So
yeah, even if it's, an 18-year-old with a 16-year-old, that is just, it's not lawful. It's not right. And hopefully this young lady gets some counseling or something. You can't just take off somebody you meet online. That's the beginning of bad stuff, usually. What else is going on, Greg? I know Cowboy State Daily has been inundated with comments and people wanting to know more and more and more about Grizz 399. And I'd like to think Cowboy State Daily is on the forefront of that story. We can debate who broke the story. It's not important, but who do people turn to when they want to know the latest? And people always have more and more questions. Where was the bear hit? What's going to happen to the bear? Where's the cub? You just have all these follow-up questions, and I hope Cowboy State Daily has become your news source out there for, where do you go to find out the latest?
Yeah, one of the main questions was, who has the bear?
Yeah.
Where, who has it? U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has it. We reported that yesterday. And they say they haven't decided what to do with the bear. And there's a lot of argument. Some people say that she should be, stuffed and placed in a museum somewhere. Some people say that you should cremate her and scatter her ashes in the Grand Tetons. And others say, just do what you normally do when any other bear is killed. And some people say don't do that because when other bears have been killed, what they've done is, it kind of seems grisly, but so to speak, that they take the head and the paws so that people don't steal them and try to poach them and stuff, and then they leave the body out for the other animals the way they do it. And so some people are saying, well, don't do that with 399. And then a lot of people are being stupid and, deliberately suggesting other things, But it's what to do with 399 now is a big debate. The Fish and Wildlife Service, they say they haven't decided, but we're hearing that the body was intact. And a lot of there's a lot of people are trying to find out who the driver was, and they want the driver charged and everything. The driver didn't do anything wrong. the Laramie County Sheriff's Office is the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. Sorry, has told us numerous times the driver wasn't breaking the law. He wasn't speeding. He wasn't driving recklessly. It was 10:30 at night. It was dark, and the bear came out in front of him. We couldn't avoid it. It's one of those things that happened. They're calling it an accident. They haven't charged him, and some people just won't accept that that's what happened. So it's an emotional issue for a lot of people, but it is what it is. The bear got killed, and and then we had a really good story too on how Grizzly 399 became the most famous bear in the world. Dale did a great job on that, and it's true. And you had your guest yesterday who explained that that it's just a combination of everything that happened, media presence, social media, and just people fell in love with the bear.
Yeah, we will recap that bear's life and death. We'll answer some questions this morning on what we can about the latest that we know, the disposition of the body, and maybe the cub update. I got a map showing you where this bear usually lives, Grizz 399, and where it was hit and killed. And that's some 50 miles as the crow flies. She really got around in the fall. That was kind of a habit. And we will, hopefully, I gave a shout out, or I gave a ping to Hillary Cooley, who I got to say is really responsive in this case. She is answering emails. She's picking up the phone. She's the new Chris Servine. She's the kind of head of this, the whole Grizzly recovery project that Chris Servine started. Hillary Cooley took over, I think, in 2017 or so. And she's been super responsive. So I reached out. Maybe we get her on the show, but she gets it. She understands the importance of this bear, and what they end up doing with it will be a collaborative effort with Game and Fish and the Park Service. And they'll all figure it out. But I'm going to open up the phone lines because from what I see on comments, it's like 50-50. There's a group that probably lobbied by taxidermists of the United States of America that want to preserve this bear somewhere we can go see it. Folks who didn't get a chance to see it can now see her in death. Do we mount her? Do we do taxidermy and have some place you can go see her, or do we do the opposite, like scatter her ashes or put her somewhere in an undisclosed location and we never know? Arguments for both sides. We'll explore that as well this morning. What else? What other stories going on that catching your eye?
Well, we do. There is that just last summer that they put up that big 8-foot sculpture of 399 at the military vehicle museum there in Du Bois. So there's a big statue. I think we talked about it a week or two ago when they implemented it, but the legislature, they backed off on those rules to restrict the press photographers. Apparently, a lot of people reached out to the lawmakers about that, and they decided to, all right, well, we'll change our mind on that. So I think that was a good thing. You mentioned the
is there any truth to the
treasurer.
Did Matt Idler really go down there and throw eggs at the window?
Well, I don't know where he stood, but yes, the irony was not lost on us that we sent our press photographer to go take photos at that committee meeting. And he got great photos. There's a reason why we like our photographers.
Yeah, Matt's the best. Sorry, what else, Greg?
That was I like the alumni treasure. I mean, I don't like that.
Yeah,
she stole from them, but it was a good story. Excuse me, that Claire got. It looks like Wyoming is fully on board supporting Utah in their in their push to have the federal lands turned over to states. Utah is suing over that, and this week, Harriet Hageman, Mark Gordon, and a whole slew of state legislators have all joined in on with briefs to that Utah case to the Supreme Court. If Utah wins, it's going to affect those public lands, those federal lands across all the western states.
Yeah, and in Wyoming, particularly the Rock Springs and Buffalo area, both have been open to mining, closed to mining, open to mining, closed, depending on what president is in for 4 years. And it's just too much of a yo-yo, too much of a political football. Wyoming says, let us just run our own lands. Rod Miller, it's a complicated issue. And of all people, Rod Miller, maybe, after 3 or 4 beers or a 6-pack, Rod Miller will make sense of it this morning. We're going to talk to him at 9:30 because he knows all about that. In fact, he had a column that kind of called out the Freedom Caucus saying, you're a little late to this party. If you want to make this a big issue in your campaign, you needed to have been there decades ago. This has been an ongoing battle between Wyoming and other western states and D.C.
Yeah. I was trying to help Sally in here, and I did some searching, and I found some of those McCormick finishing sugars. They're on eBay.
Dude,
you can get a set of 6. They look like these little jars.
Yeah.
$75, Jake.
Oh, I was going to say
$75 for little.
You would make her so happy.
Sugars.
Well, it might be a budget buster for Cowboy State Daily.
People are taking advantage of whatever shortage there is of finishing sugar.
Yeah.
That's just nuts. There's another one that selling for $80.
See?
Set.
She's right. It's harder to find these finishing sugars than it is to find the second win for the Wyoming Cowboys this season. It's tough. Yeah, and costly. You would make her so happy, though. Think about it. I will, I'll surrender some of my paycheck this week to help Sally Ann Shermer get her finishing sugars, but we'll talk with her at 8:30 this morning and talk about Cowboys, Cabbage Patch Dolls, and finishing sugar. And you'll find out why all those 3 things are interconnected.
Sounds good.
I looked up a little bit on the body man, Washington State, who was killed in a rollover accident in Dubois. He had an open top Jeep and he flipped himself out of it. He was driving. He blew a 298. That's way too intoxicated to be driving for sure. But meanwhile, the coroner in Fremont County, that's Fremont County, I'm believing, says no one.
I believe so.
Yeah, nobody has claimed the body yet. And so I'm looked this guy up kind of and try to get a sense of who he was. And from what I've learned, no one is going to claim the body. He, as far as his relatives, he might be the end of the family line. And as far as any relationships he had, let's just say Laura Bell will not be stepping forward to claim the body unless she wants to desecrate it. He may be headed for Potter's Field. But that story from Clara McFarland. What else is happening? Coffee Clatch, you been to one lately? Bill Sniffen has in Lander.
Not lately. I used to go once in a while and sit in. There's the old guys club in every community, it seems. And Gillette, there's one that meets in the mornings at the Perkins, and a lot of them are old time coal miners. So I loved going there and hearing their stories about the good old days of coal mining, which are not today. So.
We have one in Jackson at the War. I don't know if it's still there because I was invited once and then never again. So I don't know what happened. I swear I didn't do anything wrong, but
it seems it used to be they were just a bunch of old guys, and now they're getting closer to my age. I can't understand how that's happening.
Yeah, that there's something wrong about that.
You have to be careful though, because when I was young, and I still do, but I like to play cribbage. My grandmother taught me how to play cribbage, so I would play cribbage, but not a lot of people know how to play. And so I got this job in Alamosa, Colorado, little town in southern Colorado. Nobody knows how to play cribbage. And one day I'm doing the paper, and there's a brief comes across the desk that they have cribbage tournaments every Tuesday at the senior center, and anybody can come. I'm like, well, great. So I went over, and of course I'm like 40 years younger than everybody there.
Yeah.
And I played cribbage, and they just creamed me. They just kicked the crap out of me. They beat me so bad. And what I couldn't believe was they were talking smack the whole time. They were very boisterous. Come back for another beating next week, Sonny. All that kind of stuff. It was great.
I could just see you shaking your fist at those old geezers. I'll be back when I get back. What is cribbage? Is like a card game, but you got the little pins, like the game of life that you move along?
Yeah, it's a card game, and you just kind of score points, and they use the little pegs to mark points. Yeah.
Right. They're the same pegs that like go in your car when you're playing Life. If you can remember that. Similar pins. If you ever run out, you're going to go raid the Game of Life box and
they should update that.
Get your cribbage pins.
To update the Game of Life, man. Instead of having kids and the kids get a cell phone or something, they need to update that.
Oh yeah, with today's challenges, for getting through life. Oh yeah.
Instead of like getting married, maybe each of your kids have a different baby daddy or something. I don't know.
Thrown out of a cribbage match at the local senior center if you take a wrong turn.
Yeah, they were vicious.
Wow. All right. Well, we got a lot of cool stories to get to. Our managing editor, Greg Johnson, is making it all happen. He's like doing a sorcerer thing over the pot, like the witch's brew, right? Is that how managing editors bring it all together on a Friday?
Yeah, I usually wave my hand the other way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, counterclockwise. How's the weekend looking? Pretty good stories over the weekend. Not many news agencies or newspapers or news outlets, they kind of take the weekend off. They get real thin on they're like, Saturday, Sunday, they're understaffed. Cowboy State Daily just keeps it up 7 days a week, 365, like always coming with something. The weekend's looking all right.
Yeah. We usually, and it's on purpose, we're usually more feature heavy on the weekends because that's kind of the feel for it. But if something happens, news wise, we'll put it out.
Yeah, we're always there. I mean, if we have to call Mark Hines off his elk hunt to write a story about a dead bear, we're going to do it. I hope Mark can get back on the hunt, get his Blaze Orange back on. But
I hope he gets it. Those his tags.
Yeah. We're gonna talk more about Grizz 399, including things you probably didn't know. Just explore all kinds of stuff about the world's most famous grizzly bear. Greg, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jake.
Yeah, appreciate you stopping in this morning. Greg Johnson, Cowboy State Daily managing editor, going over the top stories of the day, including one that he penned himself about the teenager that was, I won't say abducted. We don't know if that's the case, but she was convinced to go on a little ride along, a little adventure with an 18-year-old. She's a minor and a runaway from Colorado. They hooked up online and then met in person. And the next thing you know, they're on a joyride out of Cheyenne heading north, and the cops found him and do the spike strip thing. And we get girl back home with mom and dad. You can't run from highway patrol in Wyoming. They gonna get you every time. 6:44, take a quick break. I'll queue up another story, and then before you know it, we're going to be top of the hour here. But let's change gears, get another story. When we start the 7 o'clock hour, I'll drop those grizzly bear updates on you. and Bear 399. But let's talk about when we come back. Let's go somewhere like completely off the reservation. Let's go to Leo's story about a movement to allow folks watching the legislative session to also get a live real-time scoreboard. How does your lawmaker vote on this? That might be fun, might be interesting, keep you awake during the C-SPAN type coverage on YouTube. And here's the latest in Cheyenne. I don't know if that's really exciting, but if you had a scoreboard, how your lawmaker voted in real time, that might make it a little bit interesting. Coming right back after these.
Visit cowboystatedaily.com.
Yeah, 647, 13 in front of the hour. Cowboy State Daily Show, finally Friday edition. And let's look in on, oh boy, I don't want to put you to sleep, back to sleep in the 6 o'clock hour. Anything concerning the legislative session, my eyes just sort of glaze over. Good thing Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson is all about this kind of stuff. When it comes to politics, legislature advances a proposal to show live electronic scoring of votes. This sounds exciting. I think it's something that should be down on the lower right-hand corner of the screen as you're watching all these powdered wigs in Cheyenne. Harumph, harumph. What think the legislator from Chugwater? Harumph. And how did said legislator vote? Well, we could see it right down there on the ticker. Oh, maybe it should be a scrolling thing, right? It's just like a ticker scrolling. How did they vote? How are they voting? Because we already know how did they vote. That is something that you can find after the fact. You can always find out, speaking of transparency in the legislature, you can always find out how the senators voted, how the House voted after the fact. It'll be up online. How did your senator vote aye or nay? How about your House rep? Did they vote yes or no? Thumbs up, thumbs down. You can find that stuff out later, pretty soon after. I've actually gone to look that up on the legislative session website. But what about it? If you're watching the actual video, you're watching, and I do not know what would compel you to be watching in real time the legislative session. God bless you. Really? But I also don't know who's actively watching C-SPAN. I know some people that put it on in the background for their dog when they leave, I'll put C-SPAN on. That poor dog must be driving crazy. But I don't know anyone who's, flipping through the channels. Let's see. Fuck, we got a football game on. I can watch golf. I can watch Survivor, Yellowstone, the series. Oh, here, C-SPAN. legislative session. I don't think I want to know the person that's actively seeking, has C-SPAN on their speed dial, that's favorite channels. Anyway, this is not C-SPAN. It's Wyoming's version of such. It's actually a YouTube channel dedicated to all the harumphing going on at the state capitol. And a new, as reported by Leo Wilson, there's an effort underway. Is there a video? No, Leo's not even doing a video on this, thank goodness. There's a movement to show you real-time scoring. The committee, which committee is this? Let's see. The Select Committee on Legislative Facilities, Technology, and Process. I think this is the same committee that brought the idea to keep cameras out of certain places in the hallway at the state capitol. So, yeah, fresh from saying that they're going to can that idea, they've got a new idea. They voted unanimously for a proposal that would allow people watching the legislature online to see how lawmakers are voting in real time. I imagine it would be pretty easy to tech out, legislators. I think they still do it the old-fashioned way with a show of, hands. And then, somebody there, the stenographer, whoever, has, counts the hands. How many are yes? How many are no? Maybe they've gone electronic down there in Cheyenne. I'm not sure. We'll have to ask Tom Lubnow or somebody who's been down there fairly recently. And if they have gone digital electronic, obviously the legislators are pressing yes or no on when it comes time to take the vote. Roll call for votes. Chief clerk. Oh, that's the one who looks and counts hands. So if it is already electronic and digital, that would be easy. We're just going to share that on some kind of tote board. I mean, the technology, any high schooler could program that for you, and you could have that on the website. It'd be a big step forward. Senator Cal Case, Republican out of Landers, said it'd be an important step toward increasing public transparency at the legislature. And that's a hot topic. That's a big topic issue right now. How transparent is your legislature? Yeah, we're looking at you, other states. Wyoming usually does pretty well whenever you do nationwide surveys on how your state operates, how your state makes laws, and the transparency of that process. Wyoming usually comes out pretty good, which is surprising that just a week ago or less than a week ago, there was sort of a underground movement to ban the press from certain areas of the cabinet. Like, that does not sound good, right? Doesn't sound transparent. And again, that idea, that movement, that notion was quashed, as we found out today. That's no longer on the table. But this one is, and this one does seem more aimed towards transparency. Senator Kay said, I think this is a big step forward to really help everybody out. Now, why is it needed? Leo Wolfson says, because mainly it's the public perception. Republican Dalton Banks, Republican from Cowley, has been one of the more vocal supporters of this proposal. He said, if we can have public perception that we are transparent and not trying to hide anything, then that's a good thing. So a lot of this is just better branding, really. Would the gizmo, or would the gizmo's not a good word. Would the what's the word I'm looking for? It's just the idea of having the vote be readily available to you on some kind of ticker tape or some kind of scoreboard. It's a novelty. I don't know how necessary it is in real time, how many people are really watching it, and how many people will have a positive takeaway from, oh, good, I know how my guy or gal voted on this. And I know immediately rather than 5 minutes later when I have to look it up on the website. Is it that important to get the real-time feedback? Or is this more just posturing? This is more just branding by the legislature to show this is how open we are about our lawmaking process, that you're going to know how we vote, exactly when we vote. I don't know. It's gimmicky, but it might be a cool thing. Leo Wolson has a story if you're interested. It's in the Cowboy State Daily. The idea that we would have a scoreboard basically during the legislative session. You'll know how your legislators are voting with a kind of a scorecard thing. All right. I guess I can do that. Grizz 399, we'll talk about that, Grizz, where she traveled from her normal area in Pilgrim Creek to where she was hit by a car on Tuesday night. Is it that long ago, or was it Wednesday night? Oh, I'm mixed up on my dates already. We'll show you just the path that she likely traversed, because it's not the first time she's come down south from Pilgrim Creek. We'll talk about the Cub and the latest on that and what U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service may do with the body. The body is intact enough and not damaged enough. Grizz 399, I mean, you imagine a horrific accident. What does the bear look like? Hillary Cooley of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said that the body, the carcass, is in pretty good shape, which makes you start thinking, okay, taxidermy, maybe we have this bear stuffed and she still looks good. You think open casket funeral, you think, something like that along those lines. Although there are other people saying this bears some peace. This bear was hounded by photographers and looky-loos and tourists all its life, 28 years. Finally, in death, do we need more people gawking at her in death? Just let her go and put her somewhere out in the forest where she once roamed, somewhere out in the park where she once roamed, and let it be. So I don't know. I'd like to hear what you folks have to say. We'll open the phone lines next hour and flesh that out, explore those issues. Let's hit Don Day's quick weather forecast for a moment. Find out what's heading your way this weekend. It's going to be a glorious weekend for high school football and college football.
Well, after a blustery Thursday where we saw a little bit of mountain snow and some showers and wind on the plains, well, things will be a lot more settled as we head through this Friday. In fact, today through the weekend looks great. One more great fall weekend coming up, whether it's high school football later on today and this evening or the Cowboys Friday afternoon and evening in Laramie. The weather's going to be about as good as you're going to get it in late October. Now, this is all just before some big changes coming next week. Our confidence is high of rain and snow overspreading the state, especially late Monday night into Tuesday and Wednesday. Hunters and livestock interests and travelers early next week will need to keep an eye on the weather.
Don, that was sort of an abrupt ending. I'm not done with my coffee. It's going to be a great day statewide for high school football. Final day of the regular season before we move to November and start postseason play. In the 4A, Sheridan will be visiting Laramie. 6 o'clock start on that. Of course, the Sheridan Broncs, top-ranked, riding this historic win streak. Do they keep it up against Laramie? All indications would be sure. It should be an easy one. This will be a fun game. Third-ranked Cheyenne East visiting number 2 Campbell County. And the Camels coming off that loss to Sheridan, so they're going to be looking to exact a bit of revenge. Cheyenne Central will visit number 4 ranked Natrona County. That's a 6 o'clock start. Cheyenne South visits 5th ranked Thunder Basin. Rock Springs at Kelly Walsh. All those games 6 o'clock starts in the 4A. And the 3A, in a game that I'll be calling right here at home, number 2 Cody, fresh off a 72-0 beatdown of Green River. Oh man, gets Jackson. Jackson's playoff hopes went out the window last week, so they're playing for nothing more than pride. That game will be in Jackson, 5 o'clock kickoff for Cody Jackson. Green River, those poor guys, those Wolves, hoping for better results, but they go from playing the number 2 Cody Bronx to playing the top-ranked Star Valley Braves in Afton. Good luck, Wolves. 6 o'clock kick for that. Third-ranked Riverton visits Rawlins. Torrington at number 4 Douglas. Powell and Evanston in a game that will have playoff seeding implications. That's a huge football game at K. Fackrell down in Evanston. Powell, Panthers, and the Evanston Red Devils. Keep an eye on that. Game of the week in the 3A. Buffalo visits Lander. Elsewhere in the 2A, Lyman at number 2 ranked Mountain View. 3 o'clock start. Note the early time there. Top-ranked Bighorn will visit Upton Sundance. Cokeville at Lovell in a battle of number 4 and number 3 ranks. So that'll be the game of the week in 2A. Kemmer at Worland. Glenrock visits Tongue River. Moorcroft at Burns. Thermop against Pinedale. And number 5th ranked Newcastle visits Wheatland. 7 o'clock kick on that one. So that rounds out your high school football scene. Let's get to Wendy Core in the top of the hour news.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Friday, October 25th. From the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, I'm Wendy Core. A nameless bear given a research number launched onto the world stage doing what bears do, having babies and protecting them. During an interview with award-winning journalist and author Todd Wilkinson on Cowboy State Daily's Morning Show with Jake Nichols on Thursday, he spoke about how Grizzly 399, the 28-year-old mother of 18 known cubs, captured the public's attention over the years. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck highlights just one of many stories about the legendary grizzly.
There was an incident in 2007 where she had her cubs with her and they were eating on an elk carcass near Jackson Lodge, and apparently a man walked out and was wandering on a trail, but there had been warnings about not going on the trails, and he ended up getting bitten by 399 and her cubs. He told authorities later that he didn't want anything done to the bear because she was doing her thing as a mama bear, and the wildlife officials, the park officials, decided that they were not going to do anything. If the park had made that decision, then 399 wouldn't have become the 399 that we all know and love.
The most popular bear mama in the world was killed Tuesday night when she was hit by a car in Lincoln County. One photographer spoke to Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi about what she and others would like to see done with the remains of the world-famous mama bear.
They don't want the head and the paws to be cut off like that grizzly up in Gardner back in July. They don't want the body to end up in a dump. They want 399 to be treated with dignity and respect.
Ultimately, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will decide what will happen to Grizzly 399, but the unanimous consensus of the public is that they want to be informed throughout the decision-making process. Well, for the second time in 5 days, Wyoming law enforcement rescued a teen girl kidnapped in another state. The Cheyenne Police Department, with help from the Wyoming Highway Patrol, recovered a teen girl Thursday who was reported as a runaway from Westminster, Colorado. Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson reports that the girl was riding with an 18-year-old who led law enforcement on a high-speed chase up and
several miles north on I-25 then. For some reason, a state trooper said they really can't fathom. He turned around and went back south and right into the waiting pursuit that was behind him with the state troopers, the Cheyenne Police, Laramie County Sheriff's Office. They used spike strips to get him stopped.
Thursday's highway stop in Cheyenne was the second in 5 days in which a Wyoming highway stop ended with the safe recovery of a kidnapped teenage girl. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Are you fabulous and 55? Are you ready to use your valuable time and talent to give back? Join Serve Wyoming through the AmeriCorps Seniors Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, or RSVP, and make a positive impact on your community. With a lifetime of skills and experiences, you're exactly what your community needs. Whether you're itching to lend a hand or your organization could use some extra support, we've got you covered. Call Sarah Roberts at Serve Wyoming at 307-234-3428 or RSVP at servewyoming.org.
U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, Governor Mark Gordon, and 26 members of the Wyoming legislature filed briefs this week urging the U.S. Supreme Court to hear a lawsuit brought by the state of Utah that could result in more than 200 million acres of federal lands being turned over to West. Leo Wolfson reports that the Utah lawsuit claims that the vast swaths of federally owned land denies Western states equal representation when compared to other states with less federal acreage.
They believe the ownership of lands that are not being used for national parks, monuments, or tribal lands is unconstitutional and should be returned to the state.
Some have called the lawsuit the latest chapter in the Sagebrush Rebellion, a revolt against federal land ownership that arose in the 1970s. And Cowboy State Daily is visiting coffee klatches across Wyoming before the election to see what topics are being discussed. The Fox News All-Stars in Lander is one of the state's oldest groups. Politics dominates the conversation, mostly leaning right, but not all the time, reports Bill Sniffen, who's been a member of this group for over 50 years.
Stan Cannon, who used to be press secretary for Al Simpson, he says, "Whoa, folks, I'm not going to vote for Trump." We all thought, really? And his reasoning was that he was one of only 15 congressional staff that had privileges to go on the Senate floor. And he said, boy, after January 6th, he said, I'm never going to vote for Trump. So even though we still are the Fox News All-Stars, we did have one dissenter. He didn't say whether he was going to vote for Kamala or not, but he just wasn't going to vote for Trump.
And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.
There ain't no bears in Arkansas. Some folks never seen a bear at all. And some folks say that bears go around eating babies raw. And some folks got a bear across the hall. And some folks say that bears go around smelling bear. And others say that a bear is a honey sweet. Some folks say this bear's the best I ever had. And some folks got a bear beneath their feet. Some folks drive the bears out of the wilderness. And some to see a bear would pay a fee. And me, I just bear up to my bewildered best. And some folks even seen the bear in me.
That's Lyle Lovett with his song Bears. We'll probably get a copyright ding for playing that much of it, but I thought a very pertinent song to play this morning as we are still thinking about Grizz 399 and the potential disposition of the body, what's going on with the cub, sometimes named Spirit or Rowdy, or I'm not sure the other names, but I thought this a really fitting, not a tribute, but a really fitting idea. And I got to give a shout out to Lisa Woodward Peterson on Facebook on the Yellowstone Hub, Yellowstone Insiders Hub. This is well written. Lisa, if you need a job at Cowboy State Daily, this is so well written. I'm just going to read it word for word for you, and you can watch along with me. This is what Lisa Peterson thinks should be done now with Grizzly 399 and the body. I know a lot of people have been kind of between tack and making it so 399 can be viewed for forever or for other tourists, or whether we should go the other route and just bury her quietly or something like that. Lisa Woodward Peterson says no monument in her image, no cold metal likeness set in cement with handrails to keep people off, no parking lot, no plastic outhouses, no sales of $12 hot dogs and $6 drinks. No patrols of already stretched thin park rangers to keep nuts from defacing it. No piles of dead flowers and stuffies of bear cubs left by the thousands who mistakenly anthropomorphize her memory as being sweet and loving. And the humans who have already fought over naming her cubs with cute nicknames, just no. Don't stuff her and leave her to rot in some dusty glass display case while people who buy books and coffee mugs and toys in her image. No more. Leave her alone. Cremate her. Allow the wind to take her ashes in some beautiful undisclosed location in the Tetons. Let her be. Allow her what she never had in a long time. Peace. If you truly love Grizz 399, give her peace. She deserves that. Well written, Lisa Peterson. There's 399 and her cubs in action back in the day. This is a typical Grizz 399 bear jam. Very typical. Yeah, you can see one of her cubs. You see mom watching as one of her cubs messes with the pylons. This is kind of how it was, on any given afternoon as Grizz 399 and the family patrolled around. It was just pylons and signs and bear jam. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you get a chance to see a famous grizzly. Certainly you're going to take that opportunity. And some cherish moments like that. But you see the paparazzi. And one of the reasons that 399 was so famous is her ability to tolerate and kind of have fun with a scene like this. You see 399 stand up and wants to make sure everything's cool. As one of her cubs messes, she's like, is everything still all right? She was just so tolerant of scenes like this. Just people gawking at her, cameras snapping. And she was just so chill with something like that. One of the big reasons this is the most famous bear in the world. That and her ability to, coexist and choose intentionally to live alongside the road where we could all see her. Thanks for doing that. But the way she chose to live, along with her longevity, is there another grizzly bear known to reach the age of 28? I don't think so. I don't think it's ever been documented, and certainly not the age of 28 and still pumping out cubs. I mean, her maternal instincts, her fruitfulness. This is a bear that read Genesis. Be fruitful and multiply. Wow. 18 cubs at least, including a batch of 4. I mean, it's really rare for a mama grizzly to have 4 cubs, quadruplets. Really rare. To have quadruplets at age 25 when she had them or whatever she was, astounding. And her ability to navigate urban interface. Let me show you where this bear traveled to and from. It's pretty amazing. Let's see if I can share this with you, where Grizz 399 was finally hit and killed, and where, maybe I can't. Yeah, I haven't taught my software. I can do it though. Hold on. Give me a second and I'll bring this up for you. This is a, oops. All right. We're getting there. There we go. This is the map, and I'll try to center it up a little better for you. This is my engineer working on the fly. And my engineer is not real good. But he's the best we got. He's the only guy we got. Okay, that's, it's kind of a small map, but I'll do my best to show you where this bear traveled. Now, you can see, hopefully, if you peer in and look closely, here's my mouse. Right here, that's the Pilgrim Creek area. So I'll zoom in. Right here is where that bear was thought to be born and kind of grew up. This is the hometown of Grizz 399. Right in here, you see Jackson Lake off to the west, Coulter Bay, Jackson Lake Dam, Oxbow Bend, the famous, most photographed stretch of the Snake River right here. Grantee, that's Jackson Lake Lodge right here. Two Oceans Lake. This area often here to the east of where you see Grizz 399 home. This area in here is some wild country, and it's full of grizzly bears. And she's not the only one. But this is where Grizz 99 grew up and where she was most likely to be seen. Right here on Highway 191. Driving along, there would be all kinds of bear jams. Right in here. This is Pilgrim Creek area of Grand Teton National Park. In years during fall, when perhaps food sources are a little more scarce, and when bears are looking to pack on calories in order to hibernate, they're getting into hibernation here pretty soon. In fall, in the last few years, Grizz 99 was known to travel from here all the way south along Highway 191, alongside this part of the Snake River. You see the Snake River here alongside the highway. She would travel pretty much on the west side of the Snake River. Down south. She would head down south all the way to Moose. Keep on going all the way through Teton Village. Somehow navigated Teton Village all the way to Wilson, Wyoming, where she was seen in many a backyard in Wilson. And then downtown Jackson. This bear somehow went through downtown Jackson. Her and her cubs were on a surveillance camera on the Teton County Sheriff's Office surveillance camera, walking right through the parking lot in downtown Jackson. Right there. How does the most famous grizzly bear in the world get through all that without getting in trouble, without getting hit by a car, without getting in some kind of altercation? And this fall, this bear continued south until right here you can see Grizzly 399, the flag. This is approximately where the bear was struck and killed in the Snake River Canyon. This is the corridor between Alpine and Holback Junction. And milepost 126, where this accident occurred, is approximately right here, just outside the Wolf Creek campground. Right about here is where the accident occurred. You can see where a bear would go. On the other side of the Snake River here, this area is just, it's straight up. You head straight up a wall. She likely came down, I'm going to guess, Wolf Creek. This is Wolf Mountain to the north. Wolf Mountain, and there's a way to come down Wolf Creek. I'm guessing she came down Wolf Creek, but yeah, made it all the way to this corridor. And as you can see, we go back and look north. That's a heck of a travel. That's a long, long way to go. My goodness. 50 miles as the crow flies. 50 miles in a straight line. So, yeah, she was a long way from home, long way from Pilgrim Creek, that's for sure. Let's check out Don Day with the weather forecast. Don joins us live at every weekday morning at 7:20. You hear the ding dong. That means he's out there DoorDash. Wait, what's the doorbell company that has a door cam? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Ring, yeah. Yeah, we can see Don Day waiting out there in the Zoom room on Ring. Don, what's happening? You made, I'm glad, last week of high school football in Wyoming can usually be really dicey. And, people are bundled up in the stands. This is a glorious way to cap off the regular season, final week of the regular season in the state of Wyoming, and a beautiful day today.
Yeah, no matter what your high school team is, no matter where it is, you're going to have really good weather. I would say perfect football weather. You don't want it too warm, right?
No.
You want a little edge to the air,
Yeah.
especially if you're a player.
Yeah, you're a little bit cool. You don't want to be sweating. I mean, you already had to do 2-a-days back in August, and you sweat it out. Yeah, now you want it nice and cool and comfortable. Perfect weather. I love it. But as you forecasted before the month of October even started, you said that Indian summer was going to end October 17th. You were dead on with that. You're already looking a week ahead in the crystal ball. Next week, especially as we get to Halloween, look out.
Yeah, we've got some big changes next week, and I want to take this opportunity to alert hunters. This storm is going to be colder than that 17th and 18th storm, and I think the impact in the high country will be a lot bigger. And this also is going to be more on a statewide basis. That last system really focused itself, and which was great, on the northern and western counties. This one will affect all of the state, and the impacts for the central and the south will be a bit higher. And this all starts Monday, late Monday. We're going to see some showers along the Idaho-Wyoming border by Monday afternoon. And then by late Monday night, Tuesday and Wednesday, rain and snow will spread across the state. And there'll be many areas Tuesday and Wednesday that won't leave the 30s. And we'll see some cold nights.
Yeah, and from what I've seen of your extended forecast, this is not like the storm that just passed. It's colder, and the one that just went by was a fast mover. This looks like it settles in for a bit, and I wonder if this is time to rush to the tire store now and put on the winter tires. Are we getting here?
Probably not a bad idea to do that, because this is the type of weather pattern change that really will change the seasons for good. There's another front coming in Thursday night and Friday. Now, we're hoping the timing is such that it doesn't interfere with any Halloween activities Thursday evening. But by Friday and Saturday of next week, a week from today, there's another front coming in. That one may not be as wet, but it will shovel in some more Canadian cold. So we're looking at a big trend change next week, but we've got another beautiful autumn weekend coming on up, so take advantage of it.
I love it. One of my favorite things about having you on live every morning is my own personal interest. I have my own personal access to the best weather guy around, so I get to ask oddball questions that pop into my mind. One of them, here's your odd of the day. We see these early snows come, and they don't stick on the road because the road surface still has warmth from the summer and the grass doesn't. What changes that? When will eventually the ground be cold enough to start holding snow? What does that? What determines it?
Well, sun angle is really important. So you talked about the ground and the pavements retaining the warmth from the warm fall we've had. But with these days shorter, that sun angle really looms large. It's more than I think people think. As that sun gets lower angled on the sky, it's going through more atmosphere. And so its effectiveness at warming the ground, warming the pavement is much, much less. And I think we'll see that next week. I think what we'll see is the pavement, see the snow sticking to the pavement, and a lot better chance that will happen.
Okay. Thanks, Don. We'll check in again with you after the weekend. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. Don Day weather forecast. Yeah, the angle of the sun. Well, that makes sense. The sun is just sort of glancing off Wyoming and warmth from the sun, I suppose. Good conversation going on at Facebook. pop site, Cowboy State Daily, Facebook, where you can see this show live. Facebook Live is playing the show. You can watch it. Rod checks in, and Rod says, hopefully Wyoming can take over its federal land for mining and mineral rights. It'd be good for the state. It sure would. Mining is down right now. Our mineral extraction business is at a low. And the controversy that we'll talk to Rod Miller about on the 9 o'clock hour to get a better sense of it. And we'll also explore that story in depth a little more here in a few minutes, is just the latest salvo in a long-standing sagebrush rebellion fight between Wyoming and other western states and the feds about who gets to control our land. You know, the percentage of land in Wyoming that's federally owned, you'd be surprised at the number, I bet. Most people know that it's a lot. Nearly 47% of Wyoming's surface lands are owned by the federal government. So nearly half of the land in Wyoming is federally owned. And the BLM manages some 18.5 million acres of public land in Wyoming. It's the BLM mainly that that Wyoming would like to wrest control of from the feds. But U.S. Republican Harriet Hageman, Governor Mark Gordon, and 26 members of the Wyoming legislature urging the U.S. Supreme Court to hear a lawsuit brought by Utah. Utah is spearheading the movement at this point. Utah's got a lot at stake as well. A lot of Utah is federally owned in BLM land. A lot of Nevada is BLM land. Definitely. There's some 200 million acres of federal lands that Western states would like turned back over to them so they could be state-run. Now, be careful what you wish for. There are some environmental groups that say that they're not really down with this. They, while we enjoy the idea that Wyoming and Utah and Nevada can control their own land and not have the shots called by somebody 3,000 miles away and not have management of lands decided every 4 years when a new president is in. That's lacking in predictability for sure. But the giving states control could open the door for some unattended consequences, could open the door for some bad stuff. Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, BHA, is one of the many environmental groups that have criticized this lawsuit and this idea that the BLM and other federal lands. BHA said in his statement, quote, "The transfer of public lands from federal to state governments is the pathway to streamline privatization." And I get that. I get that argument. The feds, the one good thing about the feds operating lands in the West is they're far away, and they basically, certainly with BLM land, they don't care. You can, if you've been to Nevada, majority of that state is BLM land. You can do anything you want. You can shoot your guns, set off fireworks, go camping, wherever you want to put your tail on a BLM land for the most part. Federal land like that it's Wild West, which is kind of fun. Now, when the states take it over, are they going to keep it open? The states say they're going to. Wyoming says it's going to. It's going to remain public land. But groups like BHA wonder, I don't know. This sounds like the beginning of, okay, this part of the former federal land is going to be for mining, and you got to stay out. And this part's going to be for that, and you got to stay out of it. They're afraid chipping away that the formerly public land operated and run and maintained by the feds is going to become closed off to the public. Sold off, optioned off, closed off. So I get that part of the argument as well. We'll talk to Rod Miller more and make sense of this in the 9 o'clock hour, 9:30. David Howell wrote that it's chilly up here in Upton last hour. We were going over the weather map, and it was cold. It was like 17 degrees in Bondurant this morning. It was 19 down in Evanston, and David said it's chilly up here in Upton. Yeah, it was kind of cold everywhere to start the day this morning. For sure. Love to hear from you folks on the comment section, and would love to hear from you right now. Actually, we're going to open the phone lines, and I'm pretty sure I'm able to take a phone. I never know because I can't tell if I'm getting a call. And I know in this day and age, people don't like to call, especially if you're under 30. I don't know anybody who just picks up the phone and calls. You got to text first, right? You can text us if you want, but we'd rather have the phone call. 307-999-TALK to get on the show. 307-999-TALK, 8255. I'd like to know what you think about what we should do with Grizzly 399's body. Do we make some kind of monument? Do we preserve the body in some taxidermy fashion and have a mount so she can be enjoyed by millions more years from now? Or do we do something different? Do we do what Lisa Peterson suggests and just give this bear some peace and rest in her death and, dispose of the body in a more reverent fashion than most grizzly bears get? Most bear conflicts, that fatalities that end on the roadway, the body's just moved to some remote location. Animals feed on it. It goes back into the ground from where it came. Organic, natural. Do we do something like that? Do we cremate her, spread the ashes in Pilgrim Creek? What do we do with Grizzly Bear 399? What think you, Wyoming? 307-999-TALK, 307-999-8255. That puts you on live on the show, and yeah, we can sort of talk it out. It's tough. I know we want to remember her memory, but we certainly did make a whole lot about a bear when she was alive, and maybe it's time to just let it go, let it rest, and give the most famous bear in the world a little bit of peace. Tough call. I've seen it in all the comment section of any story that has to do with Grizz 399. I see it going about 50-50. Some saying that, she's just a bear. We attached the fame to her. We attached all these human characteristics to her. She's just grizzly bear, like other grizzly bears. And this is what happens to them. But others say, no, this is a bear like no other. This is a bear that had magic. And we got to do something now to honor her memory, her legacy. I can see both sides to it. Bill Sniffen is visiting a coffee clatch in Lander, Wyoming, where they're discussing politics. The Fox News All-Stars. Can you guess where they lean politically with a nickname like this? Here's Bill Sniffen's story. Fox News All-Stars. Here's the group. Hey, guys. Bill must be taking the photo because he's not in it. But you can see seated around the table are noteworthy gentlemen of Fremont County. Joe Kenny's there, Stan Cannon, Del McComey. Oh, Bill is in it. Oh, yeah, there we go. Well, how is Bill in this if he took it? Tony McRae's there, Tom Cox, Dean McKee, Charlie Krebs, who's a Yankee fan. Yeah, Charlie. You and me both, buddy. Sports is definitely going to come up It's already come up. You see the Bill Sniffen story. He said Krebs was relieved his beloved New York Yankees made it to the World Series. That begins tonight, by the way. Former mayor and legislator McComey, 88-year-old, is rooting for the Dodgers. So look out. Krebs and McComey are going to be at odds. But for the most part, this coffee clatch is not at odds over politics. They pretty much agree on Republican stances and Republican issues, with the exception of a certain gentleman that says he just can't vote for Trump.
Well, Cowboy State Daily is visiting coffee clatches across Wyoming before the election to see what topics are being discussed. The Fox News All-Stars in Lander is one of the state's oldest groups. Politics dominates the conversation, mostly leaning right, but not all the time, reports Bill Sniffen, who's been a member of this group for over 50 years.
I've been going to it for over 50 years. And back when we started, it was probably 50-50 Democrat and Republican. But just like the state of Wyoming, it's shifted more to where now it's pretty much all Republican, very much. It was interesting when we talked about it. Stan Cannon, who used to be press secretary for Al Simpson, he says, "Whoa, folks, I'm not going to vote for Trump." We all thought, really? And his reasoning was that he was one of only 15 congressional staffers that had privileges to go on the Senate floor. And he said, boy, after January 6th, he said, I'm never going to vote for Trump. So anyway, even though we still are the Fox News All-Stars, we did have one dissenter. He didn't say whether he was going to vote for Kamala or not, but he just wasn't going to vote for Trump.
Yeah, a great story from Bill Sniffen as we visit these coffee clatches throughout the state of Wyoming, where a lot gets done, a lot gets decided, or nothing gets done or decided. We just shoot the breeze over a cup of coffee, talk politics, talk sports. This particular coffee clatch in Lander's been going on for a long, long time, leaning right, although... Yeah, I don't know. I find it hard to understand why the whole Capitol Hill uprising was such a thing and why it's being blamed on Trump. I didn't see the direct smoking gun that Trump ordered the Capitol Hill to be taken over. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the boat on that. Let's have that be the first question we ask Paul Ehrlich. We'll get right in. It'll blindside him. You watch. He'll have no idea what we're talking about. Let's go to the Zoom room. Paul, have you been watching this show this morning? Because we're going to ambush you with our first question that might feel like it's coming out of left field, but it's what we were just talking about.
Good morning, Jake. I have not.
Okay.
So, ambush away.
All right. So we were Paul's Bill Sniffen has been visiting this coffee clatch in Lander, where these old timers get together and talk about politics and such. And one of them, even though they call themselves the Fox News All-Stars and they lean heavily right, one of them said he's not going to vote for Trump. And can you imagine around the table, everybody went, oh. And he said, I just can't get there because of the Capitol uprising and Trump ordering his people to go take over government. And I for the life of me, I don't understand the connection between Trump. You know, I didn't get the idea that Trump gave marching orders to the American people to rebel against the vote results and to go take over their government. I don't understand why Trump takes the heat for that. That was just some people getting rowdy in D.C. I don't know. What do you think, Paul?
Well, Jake, it was an ugly situation. There's no question about that. You know, I do believe in today's age of politics, everybody can point fingers everywhere. However, I still go back to a pretty simple tenet, and that is personal responsibility. And the individuals that took it upon themselves, regardless of what they may think they have heard, to storm the Capitol. No, they were wrong. They certainly know it now, and hopefully we don't see a repeat.
Well put. Yeah. Well, I'm with that. We're talking to Paul Ulrich. I have trouble saying that last name. And I did ever since Wallace, like when I had to say Wally's name, I'm like, Ulrich. Yeah, Paul, what's going on in your world? You want to talk about, one thing we've been talking about this morning is the idea of taking back federal land and returning it to state control. Is that something you can talk about?
Jake, absolutely. We can talk about whatever you want this morning. That is a very interesting topic.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you from my perspective, anytime the state is in a lead role and in the driver's seat, whether it's sage grouse management, big game migratory corridors, wildlife management as a whole, oil and gas permitting, across the board, I believe government closest to the people clearly is always the most effective. And we have proven that time and time again in Wyoming. We know what's best for us. We should continue the driver's seat. And when you've got a state that's 2/3 subsurface mineral managed by the feds and almost half of our surface managed by the feds, that does put us at a distinct disadvantage, especially when I look at the great agencies and the people we have in Wyoming and their ability to do it much more efficient, much more effective, and better for all of us in Wyoming. I'm supportive of us managing lands within our borders.
And with much more predictability is the big reason this issue comes up is, there's no predictability. Like, how are you going to get investment, for one thing, capital investment from a mining company to go ahead and move forward with this project when it might take them 2 or 3 years to get infrastructure in place? And as soon as they do the presidential, there's a new presidential election and we get another administration in who says, we're going to stop mining, we're going to start mining, we're going to stop mining. It's a political football. That's what it's become. And that's no way to manage a state land.
Well, certainly not when our economics, in Jake, 2 to 3 years, I would do backflips at my old age if I could get a project on federal land across the finish line in 2 to 3 years. Typically, for a large-scale NEPA process, you're looking at 8 to 10 to 12 years. Now, that's oil and gas, that's mining to some cases, and that's also renewable. There's a project down in south central Wyoming that took 12 to 13 years from start to finish to get federal approval for a renewable project. So no matter what project you really want to support or are directly involved in, you're looking at a decade for approval before you can even make a dime. That's no way for us to be, beholden to others for how we want to run our state.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's change gears. You can see Paul Ulrich and the background there, which I'm guessing is superimposed green screen, but it could very well be that you're out in the middle of nowhere because you do a whole lot of that. This is a guy who gets out there. He gets around almost as much as Grizz 399. Can you talk about that grizzly bear? And we were just talking earlier in the hour about the 50 miles as the crow flies that bear traversed and does so kind of the last few autumns when bears are, in their eating frenzy. Grizz 399 and her cub, but she's made this trip south from Pilgrim Creek all the way to Jackson and navigated through a lot of urban interface and backyards and downtown Jackson and somehow hasn't gotten in trouble. That's a heck of a run. Do bears go 50 miles just to eat lunch?
Well, from my understanding, they can travel. There is no question of that. Now, for 399, clearly celebrity status, followed by the world, it has been a fascinating, concerning, tail over the last number of years, especially with 399's interactions with the public. It shows the good and the bad of the greater Yellowstone system in the explosion of visitors we've had. And boy, Jake, it's hard to put your thumb on, at least my feelings, and certainly others have a very, very emotional connection to 399. I don't share that, but I do share a greater emotional connection clearly to all of our wildlife in Wyoming. And there is cause for celebration and there's cause for concern. We need to celebrate the fact that we've got a grizzly that has done amazing things in highlighting the importance of conservation, of habitat protection, and also shed light on some very big challenges we have in Wyoming with conflicts with grizzlies and other wildlife. And so it's a chance to celebrate, at least to me, a very well-lived life, and to also focus on some of the challenges that her interaction and her cubs' interaction and generational interaction with, the onslaught of visitors brings to our state and brings to Yellowstone.
Yeah, you're right. Over the 28 years of this bear's life, she taught us a lot of things and showed us a lot of things about ourselves, both good and bad. The bad is maybe an excessive amount of passion and emotion over what is a wild animal. This is not a stuffy. It's not a teddy bear. It doesn't have some of the emotions we attach to this animal, this poor thing. But then she's done things that are just absolutely out of the character of your average grizzly bear. Many people think a grizzly bear is just something that wants to eat you. And she had incredible tolerance for people, cars, infrastructure. She was really good about that with her cubs. And maybe the reason she's so famous is she lived her life right there on the side of the road so we could see it. Incredible.
Well, it's certainly an incredible story. It's been fascinating to watch. Any of our wildlife is fascinating to watch. And it leads to that next question. When can we get to a point in this state where we recognize that any road strikes and all road strikes need more attention? And Jake, I tell you, what I've seen over the last few years in Wyoming, especially down here in Pinedale, is a real focus on that. I'm proud of our governor. I'm proud of the legislature and a lot of other folks that have invested in wildlife crossings, have invested in science and research to try to reduce those wildlife strikes on our roadways. 399 is a tragic story on how she ended a remarkable life, but every single day on Wyoming roads, we have animal strikes. And more attention to that, more investment in that, I think is worthy. And we've done a darn good job so far.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about, because of this accident in particular, good to put the spotlight back on what is a huge problem. A lot of people are talking about wildlife passes. In this instance, an underpass in the Snake River Canyon is not practical. And this is not a place you're ever going to see a grizzly bear again, I wouldn't think. But in Pinedale, you mentioned that movement, that wildlife crossing, that overhead, there's two of them, and they've been highly successful. I mean, the numbers are there. I have sat there and watched pronghorn and mule deer go right over that thing. That's a real success story.
Boy, it is. And recently, the fences and the underpasses between Big Piney and LaBarge were installed. And I travel that stretch quite a bit, and I've seen a discernible positive difference to strikes. It is expensive, time-consuming. It takes a lot of folks committed to it, but the rewards to me, and clearly our wildlife, are worth it.
Yeah, I mean, who is it that said, "Show me"? You can say what you care about, but show me your checkbook, show me your Excel worksheet, and I'll tell you what you care about. Yeah, it's expensive, it costs money, but if that's your jam, if that's what you really care about, then you put your money where you say your mouth is. Yeah.
Well, and you know what, Jake, it raises something that I'm awfully proud about when it comes to Wyoming. These type of projects, in particular with our wildlife, aren't the exclusive domain of, quote, conservation groups. We have seen the oil and gas industry, mining industry, sportsmen, ranchers, conservation groups come together to support these type of projects and this type of positive movement. That's something you don't see as much in other states. We need to be really proud of. We've moved the needle on a lot of different fronts on what we find important. And in this case, in our discussion this morning, that's our wildlife. Whether it's, a global celebrity like 399, or a mule deer, outside of Labarge, we all care deeply. And we have acted to protect them.
Yeah.
That's something that is worth celebrating.
Good point. I mean, I have seen that. You're right, Paul. I've seen examples of diverse user groups, diverse interests come together over a few things. Every once in a while it works, and it happens in Wyoming, and it happens a lot when it concerns wildlife. We all care about our wildlife and habitat. On that we can agree as Wyomingites. Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. So I do have a question, though, Jake, for you.
Yeah.
I understand from the police report that it was a Subaru that struck 399.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aware of any Subarus in the Jackson Hole area. I don't know what I missed. But is that a new phenomenon, Subarus in Teton County?
No. For real? Are you messing with me, Paul?
Yes, I am.
All right. Yeah, you're right. It's like, yeah. It's like, I don't know what it's like. But yes, it is the commuter car of choice is what Paul's referring to. It is the fleet. In fact, Subaru, what are they? They're not Swedish. What are they? They go somewhere. There's some overseas connection, but they really, at one point I saw that they were like 30%-ish of the vehicles in Teton County were Subarus, and there was a thought that they should make this county like the Subaru capital of the world or something, but Subaru's definitely, and that's a losing battle. I mean, Subaru against a Grizzly, you would think is the Subaru on the losing end of that, rather than a pickup or a semi. But yeah, Subaru, the commuter vehicle of choice.
Yep. That's for sure.
Well,
so what else is on your mind this morning, Jake?
I got to ask you that. So far, I'm thinking it's almost the weekend. It's in football, and Wyoming Cowboys Sally Ann Shermer says, when's the last time Wyoming had just one win? You got to go back to 2000 to see that. Hopefully we get a win tomorrow.
I sure hope so, too. It should be a good atmosphere for a good game. We'll see. This time of year is a little bit tricky for a lot of folks, to get down to Laramie. We're in the heart of hunting season, which is pretty special and important to us. I know a lot of my friends and colleagues and family have been out in the hills. I was up in the Wyoming Range last week hunting. Now it's time to get back focused. Hopefully catch a darn good game tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah. Hunting, there's one more thing we can ask you before we let go of Paul is, the hunting, we were talking bears, and have you seen, and there is empirical evidence of such, and there's been studies done, but have you noticed the correlation between shooting an elk and the gunshot triggering a nearby grizzly bear to think, there's a gut pile, here I come. You really have to be aware as a hunter when you pull that trigger. That's when the work starts, most hunters say. The fun's over when you pull the trigger, but you really have to have head on a swivel as you dress that animal out, because it's for real. Grizzly bear going to be looking for you.
Well, Jake, that's right. And I typically, if I can draw, like to hunt outside of Meeteetse, and that is ground zero for grizzlies. there have been days I've hunted up in that area and have seen more grizzlies than elk. And I'm always very, very cognizant of when I shoot, where I shoot, clearly time of day, and the fact that if you're hunting alone, you're at a greater risk, so you need to be prepared. And certainly based on how grizzlies are managed today, a shot could be a dinner bell, and that is concerning. And it goes back to kind of where we started this discussion, Jake, and that's with is the state and should the state be in a management role for grizzlies, whether it's our federal lands or anything else in the state of Wyoming. I think it should. And it's time that we really have that honest, serious discussion about who's better equipped to manage our species. To me, I always fall back to our great state.
Well, that's the takeaway from our discussion today with Paul Ulrich.
Just call me Paul, Jake. We're good.
Paul, that's our takeaway today is Wyoming's better suited to decide what's best for Wyoming, whether it's our land, our animals, management of our stuff should be ours, Wyoming, and not Washington, not the other
Absolutely.
W. I agree. Yep. Before you leave us, since we're still talking in morning, Grizz 399, do you have a up close and personal experience, a close encounter? What's your 399 story?
Only saw her once, and that was a number of years ago. I was riding my motorcycle through Yellowstone. She was at an intersection. I almost got ran over by a tour bus that didn't see me and was focused on getting their passengers in click range.
Yeah.
And I caught a glimpse and realized this was not a place I wanted to get run over. And so I kept going. And that shows sort of the challenges with 399. She had high intelligence. She knew what she was doing, being close to the road, protecting herself and her cubs. But it also increased significantly the opportunity for, some negative encounters. And clearly with the kind of traffic we're seeing in the park, the chance of me or others getting run over with people trying to get a view of her.
Yeah.
So I'll close with this, a life well lived for her. She's done a lot of great things for Wyoming, and she should be celebrated.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thanks for coming on, Paul. We got to have you again soon.
Hey, you bet. Anytime.
All right. The ruggedly handsome outdoorsman, Paul Yu. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. See ya.
Got to throw that in. Yeah, that's Paul joining us live, talking about the bears, Wyoming land management, wildlife management. We kind of covered the gamut, and we need a big win. Oh, man, do we need one tomorrow for our brown and gold Wyoming Cowboys, looking for just win number 2 on the season. And I think we can do it against Utah State. We'll talk with our own Sally Ann Shermer, Cowboy expert, and figure out what Wyoming has to do to get that win. We'll take, I guess we're almost top of the hour. We can get Wendy Core's news. Let's do that. And then coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, we got more Cowboy State Daily journalists to talk to, more guests on the show. Wendy's going to be joining us. Wendy Core, of course, our news person. She'll stop in at 8:15, and then Sally Ann Shermer at 8:30. We're going to talk to Leo Wolfson. He's got a ton of stories that he needs to make sense of for me because they're political, and I want Leo to talk about them. And then we're going to cap the morning off with the one and only Rod Miller, whose latest column is super cool. Charlie Goodnight. If you don't know Charles Goodnight, oh, man, you got to get clued in. He's dead. This is the guy that invented the cattle drive, which invented the cowboy. I mean, this is the whole reason we're doing any of this cowboy stuff. Is Charles Goodnight, who had the idea to run Texas Longhorns from Texas to Montana, Wyoming, and all points north before he put them on the rail, headed east to McDonald's. Yeah. Those were the days of the cattle drive. So, yeah, we'll talk to Rod about that because he's got a personal story about Charles Goodnight. And we'll also talk to Rod Miller about the topic we were just talking to Paul with, about Wyoming taking back ownership of federal lands and Wyoming deciding what's best for Wyoming rather than Washington doing such. Yeah, Rod will weigh in on that as well. Cowboy stuff, political stuff, Rod can cover it all. Top of the hour news, Wendy Core. Let's do that now.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming. I'm Wendy Core, bringing you stories from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom for Friday, October 25th. The most popular bear mama in the world was killed Tuesday night when Grizzly 399 was hit by a car in Lincoln County. Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi spoke to several wildlife photographers and others who have followed the famous bear for years, and they are all concerned that the body of 399 be treated with dignity and respect.
Everyone that I've spoken to, everywhere that you go, when a bear gets hit by a car, this isn't the first bear that's gotten hit by a car or been poached or anything like that. It's a carcass, so it's the disposal of a carcass. Everyone's saying we need to be dignified and respectful of 399's body, which just shows the emotional investment that everybody has in this bear.
Ultimately, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will decide what will happen to Grizzly 399. Regardless of what happens to the bear's body, the unanimous consensus is that people want to be informed throughout the decision-making process. The treasurer of a Thermopolis Future Farmers of America fundraising committee admitted to stealing more than $15,000 from the group. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that 36-year-old Cody Stewart now faces 11 felony counts of forgery and 1 of felony theft, all of which allegedly occurred between autumn of 2021 and September of this year.
The other committee members got together and met with the police chief, and according to court documents, they splayed out all of their bank records and showed just this depletion, with Stewart allegedly writing checks to herself. Court documents say that she completely depleted this account from thousands in the black to down in the negative.
Each charge is punishable by a maximum of 10 years in prison and $10,000 in fines. Stewart is set for a preliminary hearing October 30th in Thermopolis Circuit Court. An effort to limit press photography at the Wyoming legislature has been scrapped by a legislative committee for now. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the proposal had originally passed at the committee's meeting in September, but was brought back up on Thursday after a large outcry from the public.
The proposal was originally brought as a way to allow lawmakers to have more privacy at the Capitol and basically close off the hallways that surround the chambers that to some seem should not be open to the press. This would have been a major blow to press access at the Wyoming legislature.
Senator Chris Rothfuss of Laramie, who originally supported the recommendation, said the substantive purpose of the policy change was far outweighed by the public's concern on the issue. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Are you fabulous and 55? Are you ready to use your valuable time and talent to give back? Join Serve Wyoming through the AmeriCorps Seniors Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, or RSVP, and make a positive impact on your community. With a lifetime of skills and experiences, you're exactly what your community needs. Whether you're itching to lend a hand or your organization could use some extra support, we've got you covered. Call Sarah Roberts at Serve Wyoming at 307-234-3428 or RSVP at servewyoming.org.
Cowboy State Daily has been running a series of stories about haunted places and ghostly experiences. Episode of The Roundup, Cowboy State Daily's podcast, will take a journey to some of the most haunted places and hear some of the spookiest stories in the Cowboy State. One of these stories is told by Cowboy State Daily's executive editor, Jimmy Orr, about a ghostly encounter he had in 1996 when he was the incoming press secretary for Governor Jim Geringer.
There was a wall that just had the photo of every governor in Wyoming. And they were all the same. They all were the photo and the glass pane over it and everything. And I noticed one of the photos didn't have a glass pane. So I asked Danny about it. I said, why doesn't Alonzo Clark have glass paint on it. And he goes, it's haunted. And what do you mean? He goes, listen, we have tried to put the glass back on the pane numerous times. Whenever we do it, it falls. So he doesn't like having a glass pane over him. And so what I did is I bought a new frame for Alonzo Clark, put it over, and nothing happened. And one night, I hear a crash. True story, Wendy. I hear a crash, and I walk up to the office. It's probably about 9:30 at night or whatever. And sure enough, Alonzo Clark's photo is on the ground and glass all over the place.
Tune into the Roundup this weekend and you'll hear the full story and more. You can also get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.
From Yellowstone to Devil's Tower, the Bighorn Mountains to the Teton Range, Cheyenne to Sheridan, Rawlins to Ralston, Cowboy State Daily Morning Show covers the state like no other radio show or podcast. We love Lovell. We're eager to share the stories of Story Will Crow About Crowheart and Yodel Over Yoder. Whether you make your home in Sweetwater, Chugwater, Powder River, or Green River, the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show will make you feel right at home. Jeffrey City, Atlantic City, we see you. Little America, Big Piney, you're on our radar. Howdy, Wapiti, Meeteetse, Shoshone, Ten Sleep, good morning, welcome, Torrington, Riverton, Wheatland, Lusk, Lingle, Lander, Timber, Casey, Kerwin, Moorcroft, Mountain View, Moose, Fort Bridger, Fort Laramie, Fort Washington, Hannah, Hudson, Hewlett, Dayton, Daniel, and DuBois. We are east of Weston, west of Midwest, north of Newcastle, and south of Sundance. Border to border, we love Wyoming and every one of its communities, bar none. Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. It's 8:07 this morning on a fine day Friday. High school football today, college football tomorrow. Yeah, 8:07. We'll chat with Wendy Corr here in a few minutes. Talk about Cowboy State Daily News. How does she even do it? That's my first question, Wendy. How do you do it? This day in Wyoming history, October 25th, 1923, Senator Thomas Walsh of Montana revealed the findings of an 18-month investigation into the Teapot Dome scandal. If you're not familiar with this, there's something else we can talk to Rod Miller about. He knows a thing or two about the Teapot Dome scandal. Find out more about that at the Cowboy State Daily. Just type in, get the Googler and search up Teapot Dome scandal, Wyoming. This day in history, 1923, Senator Thomas Walsh, Montana, revealed the findings of the year-and-a-half investigation into the Teapot Dome scandal. Yeah, we looked at some politicians wearing the orange jumpsuit after that. Let's go to a gear change, kind of similar to the idea that Wyoming take ownership of its own land, ownership of its own wildlife, and basically Wyoming should own its own concerns. And I hear the pleas of Wyoming ranchers when they say the latest federal guidelines seem a little odd to them. This story from Jackie Dorothy popped on Wednesday. A great story, and we almost missed it. I wanted to get to it on Wednesday and somehow ran out of time. I wanted to talk about it yesterday as well and skipped it. So let's get to this because I think it is important for the state of Wyoming. Obviously, of the industries the state has, tourism, the number 2 industry, minerals extraction, the number 1. But in there somewhere, thanks to folks like Charlie Goodnight We got a little bit of a beef industry here, in case you haven't noticed. And Wyoming ranchers are not too pleased with the latest federal guidelines talking about what you should eat. And man, I get it. This seems wrong. The USDA has come out with a new dietary guidelines that say Americans should eat less beef and drink less whole milk. It seems counterintuitive. It seems weird. It seems like, why don't Americans eat less food that's wrapped in cellophane that you get at the C-store? It seems like obesity in America, I wouldn't point a finger at beef eating. Protein, pure protein, seems like a good thing, but, I'm not a dietitian. But I'm surprised at this, and so is the ranching industry, who feel unfairly targeted. The latest recommendations from the Federal Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee have left the agriculture industry asking, what did we do wrong? Beef is especially bad for health and leads to obesity, according to the latest federal dietary guidelines. Really? Beef is bad for your health and leads to obesity. Obviously, everything in moderation, right? If you got a diet that's predominantly red meat, maybe you have some problems with gout. Maybe you got other issues. If it's too much red meat, everything in moderation. But since when is beef bad for your health and leads to obesity, especially compared to other things that you could be eating? I guess the bag of chips is okay, but don't have a steak. Wow. I'm surprised. Wyoming Stock Growers Association will host its convention in Casper later this year, and you can bet they're going to be buzzing about this. This seems really odd, and the industry feels unfairly targeted. Here's a little bit more on it as Wendy and Jackie talk it out.
Wyoming ranchers and farmers say they feel targeted by new federal dietary guidelines that say Americans should eat less beef and drink less whole milk. Cowboy State Daily's Jackie Dorothy reports that those recommendations have Wyoming's agriculture industry asking what science is being followed to come to conclude that beef, especially, is bad for health and leads to obesity.
Ranchers and farmers are fighting back. They're saying, yes, in moderation, red meat is good for you. There is no proof that it causes obesity or heart attacks or any of that. They want to know, where is the scientific facts? Where are you getting the ideas? And who are these people that is on this 20-person committee?
The Wyoming Stock Growers Association will host its convention in Casper later this year, and Executive Vice President Jim Magagna is anticipating that the committee's recommended guidelines will be on the agenda.
Yeah, Jim, go get them. What a crock. What are the emails of the 20 people on this committee that tells us that it's bad to have steak, that you're going to get fat if you eat beef? I want the emails of all 20 of these committee members because they live in left field. I don't know, man. That seems... Yeah, it seems like they're headed down the wrong track there with that story. Our own Wendy Corr's in the Zoom room. Let's get her zoomed in here and chat with Wendy. I want this to be a regular thing, by the way. Wendy, can we just kind of meet up on every Friday morning? Is that cool with you?
I think that's cool. I think let's do that.
All right, my first question for you is, when did eating a steak get bad for your health? That seems weird. Jackie Dorothy, that story on Wednesday, if I'm the beef industry, I'm thinking, man, they're taking a shot at us. I thought jelly beans were bad for you, not a good old juicy steak.
So, Jake, something that you don't know about me and that most people probably don't know about me is that I'm actually a certified holistic nutritionist.
No, I did not know that.
Yes, I am. And let me say, I left my certification this last year because, Cowboy State Daily got a little, took over my life.
We're going to talk about that, how you even juggle all that. But I mean, we couldn't have asked a better person then. I mean, in everything in moderation, though, protein, I hear pure protein is good in your diet. Like, what the heck?
So, yes, it depends. So here's the trick. Here's the trick. They're painting red meat as bad because it does have people who eat a lot of red meat, and especially the way that red meat is grown commercially in grocery stores, in the big factory farms, things like that. They get pumped full of antibiotics. Those things are not good for us. We're talking about Wyoming grass-fed beef. There is absolutely nothing wrong with Wyoming grass-fed beef. But people who eat a lot of red meat also tend to eat a lot of other processed foods. So it really is, it's correlation, not causation, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's correlation, not causation. So for me, I look at good Wyoming grass-fed beef as one of the healthiest things you can include in your diet if you are not adding a lot of sugar, if you're not adding a lot of processed foods and chemicals and things like that to your body. There is absolutely nothing wrong with good Wyoming grass-fed beef. Nothing.
And coming from
that's in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, my diet is pizza and Snickers bars, so a steak would be.
So Jake, how you're still up walking around?
I don't know. I don't know. And I love when restaurants, and you'll see this more and more, especially in Wyoming. I love when restaurants tell you that, that steak, that beef is locally sourced, and will sometimes even ID the ranch. Like, that's great to know.
100%. Yes. Eat that steak, man.
Yeah. I like that. So, you had to kind of move that part of your life aside, and because of the And I wonder how many people know that Wendy Carr was just a regular old reporter for Cowboy State Daily. Her and I just had the regular old, pounding the keyboard, just doing the writing job. And then look where you are now. You're a TV celebrity.
I get weirdly stopped by people. It's been very strange. But but you know what? Here's the thing. I love Wyoming. I mean, when I was on radio in Cody, people would stop me because they knew who I was. Not just from that, I'm also a singer. People see me on the stage. We've been doing our music show for 20 years. So that's something that adds to local celebrity. Remember my poor children, when they were growing up, we'd go to Walmart. I couldn't get out of there because I just, when people know you, they stop. And when you know them, you stop. So anyway, it was a traumatic experience for my poor children growing up. They could never get out of Walmart, but it's also a wonderful thing. And that's what I love about Wyoming. Wyoming is just this big, small town. We all have connections. And so I love that part of it. But I was just doing radio and Cowboy State Daily picked me up because I was doing television, but just a couple of stories a week for Color 8 up in Billings, for KGWN down in Cheyenne, KCWY in Casper. So nothing where people would stop and say, hey, I've seen you on TV. That didn't happen much, but that is how Cowboy State Daily found me.
Yeah.
Someone saw one of my stories on KGWN.
And it's rare to find a news person whose mouth travels at the speed of their pen. And I mean that in the greatest way. I really do. Because I know, I get tripped up, but people that can think and talk in real time the same way they would, some writers agonize over their writing. Fingers hovered over the keyboard for, hours trying to pound out that story. You don't have that luxury when you're in radio and television. You do, yeah. But the advantage to people like you is in your wheelhouse is the ability to deliver news flawlessly, smoothly, like a TV anchor, a radio, like that's not easy.
It has taken years, Jake. It has taken years. for me to be able to do a smooth delivery like that. I mean, I'm good at a script, and I mean, I've got a script that I follow for the news and things like that. But really, the things that tripped me up for the longest time were interviews, and having smooth transitions and segues and stuff like that. And trial by fire, Jake, you know this. Trial by fire. When you're thrown into the deep end of the pool, you have to learn how to swim. And so I have learned how to be a better interviewer and do all of these things on the fly. Stuff like this, talking to you like that, like we are now. 10 years ago, I would have been umming and on and not be able to carry on the conversation. So we grow.
It's all it's all the crash and burn that made you what you are today. Is it was it Edison, when they talk about how many times he failed, he's like, it's not failure. I discovered 400 ways not to make a light.
I love that. And it's such an analogy for our lives. Oh my gosh.
All right.
When I was a nutritionist, I would talk to a lot of people about just not more than their nutrition, but their lives. And you learn to counsel people on those things. It's like, it's okay. It's okay. So you ate the piece of pizza. Now you move on. I hope you enjoyed it. Now you move on.
Here, enjoy a steak now. Yeah. So I didn't know about the holistic thing, but I knew about the music thing. Explain to people a little better why the average core family ride to Walmart, you're not going to be singing Katy Perry in the car. You're probably more likely going to be singing I Ride an Old Paint I wasn't into cowboy music until I got started with Dan Miller and the Cowboy Music Review. But my kids, they're both musical. My daughter's a music performance major at the University of Wyoming right now. In fact, she's on the road. She's in your neck of the woods, Jake. She's going to Jackson. She's no
been
way.
In Pinedale. I think she's maybe in Pinedale.
Is she going to play here? Can I see her? Oh, wow.
Well, the collegiate choir. It's the collegiate choir that's coming.
Nice.
And so they were in Green River yesterday. They were in Evanston yesterday. I think they were in Rock Springs the day before. So the UW Collegiate Choir is making their way around the state. So I'm very, very proud of them. But yeah, I raised my kids to harmonize in the car. We listened to Little Big Town, and we listened to all of those really great harmony groups. I mean, my daughter grew up with me in the Judds. That's how I grew up with my mom. But yeah, so we just grew up singing country music and a lot of we did a lot of a cappella stuff, and my kids and I would sing at church, and it was a great way to grow up. But yeah, because of that, I was able to. Dan Miller heard me sing and said, "I want you in my Cowboy Music Review," and so that's where I ended up, and I've been singing with Dan ever since. 17 years now.
You still have time for that in your future with this with the day gig?
Absolutely, yeah. Because that's the music has always come first. I've done so many jobs in the 17 years that I've been playing music with Dan. I've been a manager of a restaurant. I have worked for the Chamber of Commerce and for the Park County Travel Council. I worked at the radio station. I have done a number of things in Cody, but that's always what I say. It's like, I've got to make time for the music. So I'll work here, and that's great, but you have to understand I've got a music gig that I do. And so that's been a priority for me for 17 years. And we travel, we tour. And that was when I got started with Cowboy State Daily. I told Jimmy, or our editor, I said, "Jimmy, this is great. We're going to travel. I have to be able to go anywhere." So folks, from time to time, if you're watching me and you're going to see a slight background change, it's because I'm on the road. And that's a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's great. I love it.
I don't know how you do it all. I mean, we have Riley Strand now that's helping out with the editing scene, but it's enormous an amount of work putting together a 9-10 minute video newscast every day, every weekday, and then also the radio news. You're heard around some 24 radio stations around the state. Seriously, are you sun up to sundown? How are you doing it all?
Yes. I passed on up. I'm up. I want to get to my workout class every morning. and that's at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I want to do that. I don't always make it because there's times that it goes late, but we have our 8:30 team call that we're all on. So gotta do that. And then when everybody else, has their family time and their personal time in the evenings, that for me is like mornings. It's like 9 to 2 o'clock is when I get to go be me and do home stuff. And then after 2, 3 o'clock, it's news. It's interviewing the reporters, and it's writing the scripts, taking their stories and squishing them down to a radio size bite and video size bite, and then putting that all together. And even though I've got Riley, oh my gosh, I don't know what I do without him, because before I was doing it all myself.
Yeah.
And so it was 1 o'clock in the morning stuff, and at least it's not 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So that's good.
And it's similar, like the 4-hour morning show I'm doing similar. I'm taking 8 or 10 stories, trying to find out what it is about the story that's the best part. What do I highlight? And I've got 4 hours to shove it into. You've got a 10-minute newscast. I don't know how you do it.
I love how you can unpack and take the time and really get into those stories. I love how that's something that the listeners and the viewers can say, oh my gosh, I wanted to know more about this. And you get a chance to talk with the reporters. You get a chance. Sometimes you're getting a chance to talk to the behind the scenes people. I love that you talked to Todd Wilkinson about Grizzly 399. I mean, just what a gift it is to have this platform to be able to really dive deep. And on the newscast, I'm plugging your 6 to 10 every day because it's so worth listening to. And Jake, you got such a great personality for this. You were made to be on a radio broadcast morning show. I love that you're doing this.
Thanks, Wendy. That was a rich discussion with Todd. Speaking of that, we'll let you go on that note. The 399, I'm asking everybody that we've had today, what is your one story, your one experience? Maybe you had a visual, maybe you had a close encounter. What's your 399 story, you personally? Anything?
I don't have a 399 story. I have been so grateful to Cowboy State Daily for being able to bring those stories of 399, for me to be able to follow her, because I never saw her in real life. But her quadruplets were absolutely my favorite thing to watch. When she had those 4 cubs, I mean, I was just enamored of every story that we had about her 4 cubs. I just thought she was a remarkable mother.
It was adorable. Those little cubs and the littlest one. Yeah. Yeah. That was fun.
So that's my only 399 story is I loved all the stories.
You've had to follow her through media and Cowboy State Daily. Good. Good. That's cool. Thanks, Wendy.
It is. Thank you, Jake.
Back to the grind. Yeah, same time next week. Right. Appreciate it. I'm
working on the podcast for tomorrow. That's my next project. So
that's
folks
right.
Tune into tomorrow's podcast. It's all about ghost stories. Cowboy State Daily Ghost Stories.
A spooky edition of the Roundup. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm a little scared.
Time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jake. Bye.
Our own Wendy Core on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. Yeah, check out the weekend podcast called The Roundup, and it's going to get all scary. I love Jimmy's story today about that. The governor, Alonso's, he can't keep glass on his photo. It's so weird. That's the kind of unexplained phenomena. That's my favorite type of ghost story. I don't like, the poor little girl that was murdered 100 years ago and her ghost shows up and plays the piano. I like the unexplained, like, wait a minute, who moved the couch? Or why does that particular portrait keep falling off the wall? That stuff, the unexplained mysteries. I guess that's my jam. That's what I like for scary stuff. Okay. We're going to get ready for Sally Ann Shermer. That's what we ought to do is take a quick break. I'm going to get Sally on the phone, on the blower, as they say, and we're going to talk Wyoming Cowboys. football, and we're going to talk Cabbage Patch and finishing sugar. I know, it's weird. We'll make it all come together. You'll see. 8:32, Cowboy State Daily Show with Jake, and it's Friday, 8:30. It's time to check in with Sally Shermer. Sally Ann Shermer, I'm trying to make a phone call, but I don't know how. Okay. I think I have Sally Ann. Are you with us?
Hello.
Hey.
Good morning.
What's happening? Let me, I have to do your play-in song.
Okay.
Wait, here it comes. And if I think you can hear it, but you let me know if you can hear it. Here, I'm going to play a little bit. It's Ragtime Cowboy Joe. Yeah, that's Western Thunder playing the
awesome
touchdown celebration. We're going to hear that so many times. We're going to get sick of it this Saturday, tomorrow.
Oh, I hope so. Oh, I hope so.
Before we delve into what's in your kitchen, or more importantly, what's not, and before we talk Cabbage Patch Kids, let's talk football. And
okay,
you did the research, you did the hard work, and you had to go back in time. Thankfully, you had to go a little bit of ways in time. The last time the Cowboys won just one game.
Yep.
What did
2000.
2000.
Vic Koning's year, one of Vic Koning's ill-fated years. And to be brutally honest, I don't remember a lot about the 2000 season, except that it was horrible. I do remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And then before that, and then 30 years passed happily. And in 1970, Lloyd Eaton's last year, which I vividly remember, of course, because my dad was an assistant then, they only won one game. And of course, that was the year after the ill-fated Black 14, which I don't want to talk about. But that was Lloyd Eaton's last year, and they won one game in 1970. And then, but research and statistics sometimes, I don't know if they tell you what you want them to tell you or if they don't tell you what you want them to tell you. But anyway, I don't know anything about research really, except that I just was fascinated that in 1922 and 1921 and 1916, the Pokes only won one game all three of those years, and it was the same head coach. So for 6 years, he was able to keep his job and only won one game 3 of those years. So that tells me that, luckily there were not trolls in the basement wanting his firing after every game. But that was the very well-known and legendary John Corbett, for whom the pool at UW is named currently. But it was interesting. 13 times we've won only one game, and it's not good. And so you just got to hope that, we've got 5 more shots, and you've got to hope that one of these shots is going to work, and it might be tomorrow. Utah State is not very good, and it's at home, and the weather's going to be gorgeous. And I think that this threat of playing both quarterbacks, threat or promise, however you'd like to take it, of playing both quarterbacks. I know an awful lot of people are ill at ease about playing 2, but when one is not, we've all seen what the one is doing, so why not try the second one? You know what I'm saying? So we're going to see, and apparently we're going to see them both as early as the first quarter, which is, I think, the unique thing. Sometimes they do a quarter apiece, and sometimes they do, play the hot hand, and sometimes, there are a whole lot of different ways of playing 2 quarterbacks, and he says he's going to play them both right off the jump, and so we'll see what's happening.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the dual quarterback thing. A learned coach has said in the past, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none.
Exactly.
That's the kind of math. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I think we can handle Utah State. Both these teams coming in with a 1-6 record. I think Utah State at home. Yeah, we got these guys. Come on.
I hope so. I sure hope so.
Yeah.
The weather's going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
For the last Saturday of October, come on, it's going to be fantastic.
I know.
So it'll be gorgeous. So that'll be fun. And so we're hoping for the best. We've got a lot of the injured guys back, and as long as Wyatt can keep snagging those picks with 2 casts on, we're going to be good.
Yeah, I know. I talked to Jared a couple days ago about, we have 2 safeties and 1 good hand between them.
And 1 hand.
Come on.
That's pretty much a classic line. I think that's a great line. And, we'll see. We'll see. I hope it works out. Pokes basketball has an exhibition game tonight that people are pretty jacked about, so that's exciting. That's at 6:30 tonight at the AA, and then tomorrow afternoon, early afternoon, volleyball is home. So really, you could do a trifecta, which would be so super fun if you could find a place to stay that didn't cost your mortgage. So that's great for locals, and that's really great the way that these schedules are starting to overlap now this time of the year. So you could do hoops tonight, volleyball tomorrow afternoon, football tomorrow night. Great weekend. Absolutely perfect weekend. In my view, it would be a perfect weekend. So
Yep.
There you go.
We're talking to Sally Ann Shermer, whose illustrious career spans enough time, let's say. You're still a young spring chicken, but spans enough time that you mentioned this, and it's interesting to talk about. Back in the day, you could experience an extended sub 500 streak where your team just wasn't playing well because you didn't have the troll, you didn't have the social media feedback that's so immediate today. How long could a losing streak last today, Sally Ann, before they're calling for your job and you feel the heat?
Well,
I
read some pretty nasty stuff after the Arizona State game, and that was week 1. Honestly, so it's just all a matter of perspective. I know times have changed. when Dad was here, obviously it was not it was not big business. I mean, now today it's all big business, and you got to produce and all that. And back then it was more. I mean, even in the '60s when we arrived in Wyoming, it was more like give the kids a free education and let them play football and they'll get their education and everything will be hunky dory dandy. And it's just so different today. I mean, it's just. And the thing is, the differences are piling on at such a high rate of speed, and the mountain of differences is so high so quickly that you just are afraid it's going to topple. And a lot of pundits, think that this is the end of college sports because it's just so, there's NIL and there's all this other stuff and there's the portal and there's all this other stuff, and it's just, I mean, it's the game on the field. Happily has not changed drastically, but everything surrounding outside the lines of the field have just changed unbelievably.
You're
There's
right.
There's a great piece. I'm happy to applaud great journalism when I find it, because frankly, it's all just quick takes these days and not that much great stuff, except of course on Cowboy State Daily where everything's fantastic. But Yahoo Sports did a phenomenal piece yesterday morning on Army and Navy, who are both undefeated and both ranked in the top 25 and headed for a collision course, both for their conference championship as well as the Army-Navy game in December. But it's just a phenomenal piece. They don't get any NIL money. They're not allowed to get NIL money. After your sophomore year, you have to sign a commitment that you're going to stay in for 5 years after you graduate. I mean, it's just it's a really great piece, and it really, really clearly illustrates the differences between a service academy and the rest of us, and the rest of us who are trying to get to that top elite with NIL and the portal and all that other stuff. So it was a really great piece, and it pretty much illustrates much. The challenges that we have in sports today, in college sports today, is just unbelievable. And you're right to think that I was here. I mean, honestly, I do remember the 60s. I was a pre-teenager, and I remember the 60s vividly. And so to think of the changes just in that 60-year span is just remarkable.
Yeah, and I'm going to go read that story. That's interesting because it is a breath of fresh air in collegiate sports to see Army Navy succeeding, playing well, ranked.
Oh man.
And kind of doing it old school when today's college football scene, the product on the field is the same, but things started to get different when you started paying coaches millions, and now we see where your priority is as a university football program, and now we're paying the players. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
And I know we just add one more thing to the thing that's going to topple college sports. At least football. I don't know. So yeah, let's get off that subject for a second and come to I don't know if you were listening and watching earlier, but our own Greg Johnson went on a search to find you some finishing sugar, and we found the set on eBay for like $80. It's ridiculous.
Oh, he didn't pay that, I hope to God.
Well, he was thinking about it.
No. Because here's the thing. Even with online journalism that doesn't have to go through the printing press, the update to that I've been saving. I didn't break the news on Facebook because I wanted to break it on your show.
Oh.
My beloved did find it yesterday.
Oh, thank goodness.
After I hit send on the column, he did find it in Casper. There wasn't a lot there, but they had just put it out the same exact place where I told him to go 3 days prior. It wasn't there 3 days prior, and it was there yesterday morning. And so now I have it. I'm looking at the bottles. They're all very lovely. And so tell Greg he's a sweetheart to go searching. But that that eBay price is ridiculous, and you can buy it all along. And I didn't put this in my column, but all along when I was searching and thinking this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. What has possessed me to do this? You could buy it on Walmart.com for $15.99 a bottle. a bottle. And these are
Whoa.
just like tiny little, like you buy chili powder. I mean, they're just like tiny short bottles. $15.99 a bottle on Walmart.com. And at the store, they're $3.47, which is pretty much the price that I've seen around the country. But here's the problem. I, am on Facebook all day long, and because it's my entertainment source, it's my news source, it's my, it's so ridiculous. I need to stop it. I have an addiction. But anyway, so I'm in this bakers group, and there are 300,000 people, almost all women, in the 300,000 people in this forum, this baking forum on Facebook. And so the manicness, the craze of trying to find this sugar is just multiplied and, multiplied and squared and multiplied and squared. And all these women all over, mostly women, some men, but mostly women. And it's an international group, so it's not even just the United States, but all these women are looking for this one same product. Now, you tell me that McCormick doesn't know how to market. I mean, that's ridiculous. And now what they're saying is what McCormick is saying, the maker of the finishing sugar, which is, honest to God, it's sugar with extract added. I mean, my dog could make it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway, what McCormick is telling people now is this is a one-time only shot, and when this supply is gone, it will not be reproduced. It was made only for the holiday cookie baking season.
I'm looking at McCormick's website right now, and we have it up. Sally Ann doesn't see that, but McCormick says limited time flavors, unlimited delight. And you see the six,
Yeah,
the hard to find.
I told you. That's ridiculous.
I know it.
It's sugar. I mean, it's sugar. It's ridiculous.
But
it's ridiculous.
we can't have holiday cookies without it. To find out what Sally Ann Shermer, what the heck she's talking about, you're going to have to read her latest column in Cowboys Day Daily. How we've gotten from cowboy football to sugar to Cabbage Patch Kids. Yeah, it's crazy meandering in the mind of Sally Ann Shermer. Yeah. Utah State, I know we can beat this team. Come on, Sal.
Yes,
this
absolutely.
is win number 2.
Come on. And then they'll get the Bridger rifle back, and everything will be good. And those kids, those boys, love that rifle. I mean, of all the trophy games we have, people are like, that's ridiculous. Well, it might be ridiculous, but those boys love that rifle, so that'll be awesome to see too. So that'll be a fun day.
That's ours. It belongs in Laramie. Let's get it, and let's get win number 2 so we don't have to talk about, the year 2000, 1977. No, not going to happen. All right, we're good. We're back on track. It's going to be a fantastic day, beautiful weather. Sally Ann's going to be down there tailgating beginning at 11:30. Oh, wait, she doesn't tailgate. But she'll be there watching the ball game. I love it.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks for stopping in. That's Sally Ann Shermer, our expert on all things University Wyoming and all things cowboy football. And, of course, she weighs in on some McCormick finishing sugar. I didn't even know what that was or what it is, but McCormick is marketing it as if it's, your chance to buy it was yesterday and you missed it. And Greg Johnson earlier this morning was trying to help Sally Ann out. He was finding some on eBay for an exorbitant fee. Yes, ridiculous. 8:48 this morning. We're going to hit right on this next story before we hit the top of the hour news because I got 2 guests coming up at 9 o'clock that I know we want to get to. Let's start with Claire's story about the Cheyenne Police Department. It's tough. Anytime you make a traffic stop nowadays, it's really touchy. It's really difficult. And especially if the traffic stop, unfortunately, involves someone of color. Cheyenne Police Department right now is asking a federal judge to dismiss a black man's racial discrimination lawsuit, saying the man didn't stay within the rules for making that claim. This is not the first time the lawsuit has been attempted. And here's what happened. Here's what went down. And let me share this story, share the photos with you as we take a look at Claire McFarland's story. Here's the young man bringing the lawsuit, Gene Clementson. This stems from an incident, I believe, a year ago. Hold on, but what the Cheyenne Police Department, what happened was this guy was leaving his job at the post office. I think he did like an 11-hour shift. He said he had not a drop to drink, just coming home from a long day at the office, at the post office, that is. And he made this right turn on a yellow light or something, enough that the Cheyenne Police Department, pulled him over. Boop. And this happened 2 years ago. And the first officer to arrive on the scene, who tapped on the window, thought he smelled alcohol in the breath of Gene Clementson. But he couldn't be sure. Apparently, he was recovering from COVID and he couldn't smell real good, but he thought there was reason to believe there was alcohol involved. He saw some red eyes, allegedly, from the driver and thought maybe we got some impaired things. So that turned out to, be an innocent traffic stop. Next thing you know, there are 5 officers responding because Clementson does not listen and do what officers asked him. And it's on one hand, it's hard for me to say because I'm a white guy. I don't know what it's like to be pulled over as a black man by white cops. I don't know. I'll never know. And there are times when, you probably feel a little weird. But no matter what the color of your skin, purple, red, brown, white, green, do what the cops tell you. Things go a lot better. I mean, there's thankfully less and less cases of abuse by police departments. They're all, they got the cameras, they got to wear the vest cams. And I know it still continues to happen. I know there's incidents, but for the most part, you're never going to go wrong following the instructions of the officer. If they say get out of the car, get out of the car. I mean, how hard is this? Clementson would not get out of the car. He had to be pulled from the car in an aggressive manner that he says caused him injury. The complaint accuses an officer of dragging Clementson from his car aggressively. It was a 21 minutes in all in the stop before Clementson was handcuffed forcefully, he says, under no legal cause whatsoever. Clementson was not under the influence of alcohol at all, even though officers thought that might be the case. Sometimes they're wrong. But, if you follow the officer's instructions, things go a lot easier for you. Here's our own Claire McFarland talking to Wendy Core about the story.
The Cheyenne Police Department is asking a federal judge to dismiss a black man's racial discrimination lawsuit, saying the man didn't stay within the rules for making that claim. In Gene Clemenson's lawsuit, he claims he was harassed and falsely accused of drunk driving after making a haphazard stop as he turned right on a red light 2 years ago. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that the police department is asking the U.S. District Court for Wyoming to dismiss his allegations, saying they don't fit the proper legal framework.
It's a lot harder to sue the government in Wyoming than anyone else. There's a set of rules you have to follow. You don't follow those rules, you have to make certain showings. And they're saying you didn't do that. You have these bald legal assertions, and that part should be thrown out.
The department is also asking the court to remove Clemenson's request for punitive damages.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. Wyoming, Cheyenne PD saying that they were not at fault in this lawsuit. Clementson is once, I believe, and didn't get anywhere in the original complaint. And Cheyenne PD wants this case to be dismissed yet again. Elsewhere in the state, interesting story that we've already discussed a bit, and we'll talk again with Rod Miller about this, the idea that Wyoming wants to take back federal lands, particularly BLM lands. Utah is suing the federal government in order to liberate many acres of BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, federal land within the state of Utah. Wyoming has a lot of BLM land, so does Nevada. So there are western states kind of get latest in this so-called sagebrush rebellion is a letter whisked off to Washington, D.C. from Harriet Hageman, Governor Mark Gordon, and 26 legislators. They've all filed briefs with the U.S. Supreme Court. That's where the lawsuit is headed, by the way. Utah went right to the U.S. Supreme Court. And at stake is some 200 million acres of federal land that western states are asking that be returned to their management rather than federal management. Most of it BLM land. Wyoming has almost half of Wyoming's surface land is under federal control, owned by the federal government. 47%. That's BLM manages about 18.5 million acres of public land and nearly 43 million acres of federal mineral estate for multiple use in Wyoming, according to the agency. Here's our own Leo Wolfson, who we'll talk to later in the 9 o'clock hour to make more sense of it. Leo talks to Wendy Core about this issue.
U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, Governor Mark Gordon, and 26 members of the Wyoming legislature filed briefs this week urging the U.S. Supreme Court to hear a lawsuit brought by the state of Utah that could result in more than 200 million acres of western states. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the argument is in regards to the federal government's ownership of land in western states, which, according to the Utah lawsuit, denies them equal statehood and representation when compared to other states with less federal acreage.
They believe the ownership of lands that are not being used for national parks, monuments, or tribal land unconstitutional and should be returned to the state. Even though it doesn't directly affect Wyoming immediately with the lawsuit, the result of the lawsuit could absolutely have effect on Wyoming as far as overturning the BLM's right to manage.
Called the lawsuit the latest chapter in the Sagebrush Rebellion, a revolt against federal land ownership that arose in the 1970s.
Yeah, Sagebrush Rebellion, a term coined by, I think, our own Rod Miller. At least he uses that term often. And we'll talk to him later this hour, later next hour, 9 o'clock hour, to get more from this. It's interesting to learn how so much of the western states, so much of that land is federal. How did that come to be? How, not the case when you go east of the Mississippi and you look at other states, and that's the crux of this lawsuit. Other states don't have this much land owned by the feds. What are the feds doing owning so much land in these western states like Wyoming and Utah? How did that come to be? Where did that get started? And is that fair when you compare us to other states? What's at stake, obviously, is some mining aspects, certainly, for Wyoming. Wyoming wants to be in control of its own land, especially when it comes to mining, something that Wyoming depends on economically. And in Wyoming, you've got areas in the Rock Springs region and in the Buffalo area where mining has just been logjammed, just been held up by whatever presidential administration is in there. The mining environment was pretty good when Trump was in. And when Republicans are in general, as soon as Biden took office, mining just shriveled right up in Buffalo and Rock Springs, go figure. And it's that 4-year swing and not knowing and having no predictability it's also at the heart of this matter. How can Wyoming manage its lands if we don't know? It depends on the president. It's no longer about responsible land management. It's about posturing in D.C. So, yeah, interesting debate. And Leo's going to talk about it. He wrote the story. And Rod Miller's going to talk about it because he has special background in this area. We'll cover all that and more in the 9 o'clock hour. For now, though, let's usher in Wendy Core one more time with her top of the hour news.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Friday, October 25th. I'm Wendy Core, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, brought to you by 4 Wyoming PAC. 4 Wyoming PAC says this November, Wyoming will vote to allow residential homes to be taxed at a lower, fairer rate, even the playing field, and give families a much-needed break. 4 Wyoming PAC wants you to vote yes on Amendment A. A nameless bear, given a research number, launched onto the world stage doing what bears do, having babies and protecting them. During an interview with award-winning journalist and author Todd Wilkinson on Cowboy State, spoke about how Grizzly 399, the 28-year-old mother of 18 known cubs, captured the public's attention over the years. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck highlights just one of the many stories about the legendary grizzly.
There was an incident in 2007 where she had her cubs with her and they were eating on an elk carcass near Jackson Lodge, and apparently a man walked out and was wandering on a trail, but there had been warnings about not going on the trails, and he ended up getting bitten by 399 and her cubs. He told authorities later that he didn't want anything done to the bear because she was doing her thing as a mama bear, and the wildlife officials, the park officials, decided that they were not going to do anything. If the park had made that decision, then 399 wouldn't have become the 399 that we all know and love.
The most popular bear mama in the world was killed Tuesday night when she was hit by a car in Lincoln County. The local sheriff's office didn't ticket the driver. Wildlife photographer Kelly Ogilvie learned that Grizzly 399 was dead Wednesday afternoon. After the initial shock wore off, there was only one thing on her mind: the status and location of Grizzly 399's body. Ogilvie spoke to Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi about what she and others would like to see done with the body of the world-famous mama bear.
They don't want the head and the paws to be cut off like that grizzly up in Gardner back in July. They don't want the body to end up in a dump. They want 399 to be treated with dignity and respect. The telling thing is, everyone that I've spoken to, everywhere that you go, when a bear gets hit by a car, this isn't the first bear that's gotten hit by a car or been poached or anything like that. It's a carcass, so it's the disposal of a carcass. Everyone's saying we need to be dignified and respectful of 399's body, which just shows the emotional investment that everybody has in this bear.
Ultimately, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will decide what happens to Grizzly 399. Happens to the bear's body, the unanimous consensus is that people want to be informed throughout the decision-making process. Well, for the second time in 5 days, Wyoming law enforcement Thursday rescued a teen girl kidnapped in another state. The Cheyenne Police Department, with help from the Wyoming Highway Patrol, recovered the teen girl reported as a runaway from Westminster, Colorado. Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson reports that the girl was riding with an 18-year-old who led law enforcement on a high-speed chase up and down I-25 near Cheyenne.
They went several miles north on I-25 then. For some reason, a state trooper said they really can't fathom. He turned around and went back south and right into the waiting pursuit that was behind him with the state troopers, the Cheyenne Police, Laramie County Sheriff's Office. They used spike strips to get him stopped.
Thursday's highway stop was the second in 5 days in which a Wyoming highway stop ended with the safe recovery of a kidnapped teen girl. On Sunday, Highway Patrol troopers and Rawlins Police stopped a registered sex offender from Nebraska who was suspected of abducting a 13-year-old girl from her home in South Dakota. U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, Governor Mark Gordon, and 26 members of the Wyoming legislature filed briefs this week urging the U.S. Supreme Court to hear a lawsuit brought by the state of Utah that could result in more than 200 million acres of federal lands being turned over to western states. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the argument is in regards to the federal government's ownership of land in western states, which, according to the Utah lawsuit, denies them equal statehood and representation when compared to other states with less federal acreage.
They believe the ownership of lands that are not being used for national parks, monuments, or tribal lands is unconstitutional and should be returned to the state. Even though it doesn't directly affect Wyoming immediately with the lawsuit, the result of the lawsuit could absolutely have effect on Wyoming as far as overturning the BLM's right to public lands.
Some have called the lawsuit the latest chapter in the Sagebrush Rebellion, a revolt against federal land ownership that arose in the 1970s. The treasurer of the Thermopolis Future Farmers of America fundraising committee admitted to stealing more than $15,000 from the group. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that 36-year-old Cody Stewart now faces 11 felony counts of forgery and 1 of felony theft, all of which allegedly occurred between autumn of 2021 and September of this year.
She's been president of this FFA alumni committee for more than 4 years. And the other committee members got together and met with the police chief. And according to court documents, they splayed out all of their bank records and just this depletion, with Stewart allegedly writing checks to herself. These require 2 signatures, but the 11 of the dozen felony charges she faces, say that she forged the president's signature repeatedly. Court documents say that she completely depleted this account from thousands in the black to down in the negative.
Each charge is punishable by a maximum of 10 years in prison and $10,000 in fines. Stewart is set for a preliminary hearing October 30th in Thermopolis Circuit Court. Well, Cowboy State Daily is visiting Coffee Action to see what topics are being discussed. The Fox News All-Stars in Lander is one of the state's oldest groups. Politics dominates the conversation, mostly leaning right, but not all the time, reports Bill for 50 years.
I've been going to it for over 50 years. And back when we started, it was probably 50-50 Democrat and Republican. But just like the state of Wyoming, it's shifted more to where now it's pretty much all Republican, very much. It was interesting when we talked about it. Stan Cannon, who used to be press secretary for Al Simpson, he says, "Whoa, folks, I'm not going to vote for Trump." We all thought, really? And his reasoning was that he was one of only 15 congressional staffers that had privileges to go on the Senate floor. And he said, boy, after January 6th, he said, I'm never going to vote for Trump. So anyway, even though we still are the Fox News All-Stars, we did have one dissenter. He didn't say whether he was going to vote for Kamala or not, but he just wasn't going to vote for Trump.
And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily on day.
Well, after a blustery Thursday where we saw a little bit of mountain snow and some showers and wind on the plains, well, things will be a lot more settled as we head through this Friday. In fact, today through the weekend looks great. One more great fall weekend coming up, whether it's high school football later on today and this evening or the Cowboys Friday afternoon and evening in Laramie. The weather's going to be about as good as you're going to get it in late October. Now, this is all just before some big changes coming next week. Our confidence is high of rain and snow overspreading the state, especially late Monday night into Tuesday and Wednesday. Hunters and livestock interests and travelers early next week will need to keep an eye on the weather.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 15 seconds with more news.
Comparing your home to a luxury resort is like comparing apples to oranges. So why are they being taxed the same? Amendment A allows our homes to be taxed at a lower, fairer rate than commercial properties. Vote yes on Amendment A.
An effort to limit press photography at the Wyoming legislature has been scrapped for now. On Thursday, the Select Committee on Legislative Facilities, Technology, and Process voted unanimously to recommend not enacting a policy that would prohibit photo and video journalists from entering the halls that run next to the House and Senate floors. Cowboy State Daily's Leah Wolfson reports that the proposal had originally passed at the committee's meeting in September, but was brought back up on Thursday after a large outcry from the public.
The proposal was originally brought as a way to allow lawmakers to have more privacy at the Capitol and basically close off the hallways that surround the chambers that to some it seems should not be open to the press. This would have been a major blow to press access at the Wyoming legislature. Many people spoke on behalf of rejecting this proposal on Thursday, and it seemed that the committee had already changed its mind about it even before the discussion had started.
Senator Chris Rothfuss of Laramie, who originally supported the recommendation, said the substantive purpose of the policy change was far outweighed by the public's concern on the issue. The Cheyenne Police Department is asking a federal judge to dismiss a black man's racial discrimination lawsuit, saying the man didn't stay within the rules for making that claim. In Gene Clemenson's lawsuit, he claims he was harassed and falsely accused of drunk driving after making a haphazard stop as he turned right on a red light 2 years ago. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that the police department is asking the U.S. District Court for Wyoming to dismiss his allegations, saying they don't fit the proper legal framework.
It's a lot harder to sue the government in Wyoming than anyone else. There's a set of rules you have to follow. If you don't follow those rules, you have to make certain showings. And they're saying you didn't do that. You have these bald legal assertions, and that part should be thrown out.
The department is also asking the court to remove Clemenson's request for punitive damages. And cowboy stories about haunted places and ghostly experiences. On tomorrow's episode of The Roundup, we'll take a journey to some of the most haunted places and hear some of the spookiest stories in the Cowboy State. One of those stories has been told by Cowboy State Daily's executive editor Jimmy Orr about a ghostly encounter he had in 1996 when he was the incoming press secretary for Governor Jim Geringer.
There was a wall that just had the photo of every governor in Wyoming. And they were all the same. They all were the photo and the glass pane over it and everything. And I noticed one of the photos didn't have a glass pane. So I asked Danny about it. I said, why doesn't Alonzo Clark have glass pane on it? And he goes, it's haunted. And what do you mean? He goes, listen, we have tried to put the glass back on the pane numerous times. Whenever we do it, it falls. So he doesn't like having a glass pane over him. And so what I did is I bought a new frame for Alonzo Clark, put it over, and nothing happened. And one night, I hear a crash. True story, Wendy. I hear a crash. And I walk up to the office. It's probably about 9:30 at night or whatever. And sure enough, Alonzo Clark's photo is on the ground and glass all over the place.
You can tune in to the Roundup this weekend and you'll hear the full story and more. Thanks for tuning in to today's video newscast. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.
Thank you, Wendy. Let's go to Capital City, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Alonzo Clark, the 16th governor of Wyoming from 1931 to 1933. Born in Flint, Indiana. Died at the age of 84 in Thermopolis, Wyoming. His aversion to glass was well known. No, I'm just making that. I don't know. There's nothing about him. I'm trying to look him up. Why does Alonzo Clark, why does the photo of him not want glass on it? I might have to do some more research. I'll have to do some more digging. But this was just a chance to be spooky and play my NPS-style documentary music. Alonzo Monroe Clark. He never liked his photo taken. I don't know, maybe we can figure out some reason. Acting governor of Wyoming from 1931 to 1933. So it was during the Great Depression. Maybe he just thinks that portraits on the wall are too extravagant in the times of depression. I don't know. But an interesting story. More ghostly stories coming up in Wendy Corr's Roundup. Hopefully you watch that podcast over the weekend. This weekend's Roundup is going to concern all kinds of spooky stories. Notice I did not say spooktacular. That's a $5 fine. You got to pay the kitty if you refer to something as spooktacular. We're trying to get Rod Miller on here. I was going to have him on at 9:30. I was going to have Leo on right now, but Leo says he can't do now. He can only do 9:30. So, yeah, the headaches of the producer of the show, who is also me. I'm trying to tell Rod, get in the Zoom room now, man. because we're going to have a log jam at 9:30, and I got a lot to talk about with Rod. But I don't know that the message is getting through. Great sunrise photo to start our day. Everybody likes it. Some folks commenting on the Facebooks love that shot. Cheryl Dent Fulton of Worland captured a fantastic sunrise to start us off. She got another good one back in April that looks the same. Like, apparently where she is in Worland, the sunrise skies are that cotton candy red clouds. It's just beautiful. What a way to start the day on a Friday. And we're going to get great weather today. Don Day's weather forecast includes sunny skies for just about everybody. A little bit of a cool start to the day across the state, and then sunny, a little bit of breeze here and there, but sunny and very comfortable today in the upper 50s, upper 60s, depending on where in the state exactly you are. This morning we looked at the ground covered by Grizz 399 and her travels south from her home stomping grounds of Pilgrim Creek. Her and her cub traversed some 50 miles south to the Snake River Canyon, where she was hit and killed by a motorist Tuesday night. But that's a long, long way to go in your autumn search for food before you den. I mean, she got going a long way. I wonder if the cub now makes its way back to Pilgrim Creek. Be interesting to see what the cub does, and very interesting to see what is the disposition and disposal of the body. What do we do with Grizz 399? You got one camp saying she should be forever immortalized with some taxidermy. Maybe we should mount her, stuff her, and put her somewhere, in a visitor center where millions can enjoy her for decades to come. Others say let her have some peace finally and just either cremate her and spread her ashes in Pilgrim Creek, or just cart her carcass out in the middle of nowhere somewhere and have her as if, organically, as if she died. She goes back and feeds nature in that respect. So, yeah, I don't know how you want to do it. Tough decision, and that decision lies with the agencies, including U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They are discussing things with the National Park Service and inviting in, I think, to some degree, Wyoming Game and Fish, and they're all trying to figure out what is the best way to move forward here. And I do have to credit Dr. Hillary Cooley, who is now running the whole grizzly bear recovery thing. That was Chris Servine who had that job back in the beginning. And Dr. Cooley has taken over in 2017 as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's new grizzly bear recovery coordinator. And Hillary has been really accessible, not just to the media, but to any old Joe that calls her up and says, what are you going to do with 399? Can you imagine how many phone calls and emails she's gotten? What's going to go on with 399? She's been there. We had a story in the Cowboy State Daily. It talked about one wildlife photographer, I believe, Ogilvy, who said, he took a shot at calling the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This is a major federal agency, and he left a message, and he said, sure enough, 30 minutes later, Dr. Cooley called me back. They talked some things over about 399, and Hillary Cooley assured Ogilvy that the bear's body was in decent shape, and the body was currently being kept in a decent place. And as to what would happen moving forward, she couldn't really say. But, credit U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for at least being, proactive and at least being accessible. That's super cool to know.
I agree, Jake.
Yeah, let's get in the Zoom room. Jimmy Orr is with us right now. We're looking for Rod Miller. But, Jimmy, your story about Alonzo Clark, I'm trying to figure out, what life that he doesn't like his picture took or hanging, or he doesn't like glass. I don't know.
It's 100% true story, and then we'll transition to Rod. Rod's behind me. He is sampling the number 2 whiskey in the country.
Hey,
Wyoming whiskey. I said it like Randolph on Trading Places. Whiskey. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But Jake, 100% serious, and Rod will find this interesting because Rod worked with Denny Curran. Rod?
Yeah.
You know Denny Curran?
I heard you mention him in your ghost story.
Yeah, so he told me this painting, this portrait is haunted, and it is 100% haunted because when it fell off. Well, you know the whole story. I'll transition. I'll let Rod come up, and you can talk about fun stuff.
16th governor of Wyoming, served from 1931 to 33, and Alonzo Clark. Yeah, don't try to hang his photo anywhere. He's really disturbed by that, and he's really disturbing. That's a freaky, scary story. Rod, we're going to go all over the place from teapot.
No, we're not. We're going to set some ground rules right now. I'll talk with you about anything you want as long as it doesn't involve a dead bear.
It's not going to, I promise.
All right, good.
It's not going to involve a dead bear. It's going to involve longhorn cattle.
Yeah.
Texas Longhorn. It's going to involve Teapot Dome. We're going all over. And it just may involve a little bit of this sagebrush rebellion going on. That's in the news yet again. This story is decades old. So yeah, let's move around. Let's start with your column. I had no idea of your connections to and everybody remove your Stetson, the Charles Goodnight. You're in a whole new level of stratosphere of celebrity. I can't even talk to you, Rod, knowing that you once owned, for a brief period, Charlie Goodnight's ranch. Like, what? Get us back there.
I worked for the Nature Conservancy in the Panhandle of Texas, and they had a ranch on the lip of Paladuro Canyon, and they hired me to manage it and do like some planning on it, stuff like that. And just at my office was 10 feet from the canyon. I could walk 10 steps from my office and the earth just dropped out from under you. Paladuro Canyon is an incredible, incredible feature. So about a mile from our place was the site of the McKenzie fight, where the U.S. cavalry under Rail McKenzie came down and murdered all Quanah Parker's horses, and the Comanche had to surrender at that point. And then a few miles further down Paladuro Canyon was Charlie Goodnight's ranch. And I heard from a friend of the family that the family was thinking about selling it. And I had these nightmares of Charlie Goodnight's ranch being turned into like a Six Flags over Texas, or strip malls and hotels, and so I acquired an option on the ranch. For a year, I had first right of refusal if they decided to sell it. And I thought that would give me time to go find like a conservation buyer who could maybe pick up the ranch and donate a conservation and preserve its historic and its ecological value, because it's a special place. Turns out it's never going to be developed. It's too far from any place and too rugged. But for a year, I had an option on Charlie Goodnight's ranch. And in the course of doing that, I got to know the ranch. And as I mentioned in the column, I found the dump. It's like a couple of miles from his house, down this big, deep gully where they just, dump stuff.
Yeah.
And I always heard that Charlie Goodnight never allowed no whiskey drinking on his ranch. And so I poked through the dump to see if I could find like an old whiskey bottle to disprove that theory. Didn't find any, but I did find this dark purple ink bottle that I kept with me for a long. The family said, yeah, I could have it. So that's my connection with Charlie Goodnight. I've always been fascinated by that man, the things he did. His grave is, I don't know, it's a few miles from his house, near the Goodnight School, near Claude, Texas. And his grave is just kind of a nondescript marble slab with his name and dates on it and stuff like that. And it's surrounded by like a low wrought iron fence. And cowboys, as they drive past that country, will stop at Charlie Goodnight's grave and take off their neckerchief and tie it on that fence. And I've tied 2 or 3 or 4 of my neckerchiefs on that fence. And, you know, the neckerchiefs kind of wave in that gentle panhandle breeze. And a friend of mine said that Charlie Goodnight's grave, with those festooned with those neckerchiefs, is like the cowboy medicine wheel. He is deeply revered by people in the livestock industry because of what he did. So
yeah.
I never met the man.
We're talking about the legendary cattleman, Charlie Goodnight, his partner, Oliver Loving, and the whole reason why we have the cowboy. Basically, these guys come up with the idea to drive their steers in the 1860s through hostile Comanche land. Actually, they kind of went around Comanche land and went through Raton Pass, I think, for 1 year. And Charlie Goodnight got mad that he was robbed with a toll there. He had to go. He was charged 10 cents a head. That's ridiculous. And from then on, he's like, I'm going right through Indian country. It's better than paying this exorbitant toll. But well, what?
East of Pueblo, real near Raton Pass, up near the Trinchera, there's a little town called Goodnight. And Charlie Goodnight had a ranch up there, which is like halfway between, you know, the Panhandle and Wyoming and Montana, where he could stop and rest his cows and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there, you know, the town of Goodnight is still there.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where he put his PAT brand on these steers. If you're a brand watcher, and I know you are, what cattle is moving north? I think he put a PAT brand on those cows, but that guy is ahead of his time, ahead of his mind on the things he thought of. He was trying to save the western buffalo, the bison. He had a bison ranch. He even staged for his Indian friends and videoed a chance for Native Americans to go on a bison hunt with his bison.
When the UP Railroad came through, it split the bison herd into the northern and the southern herds. And the southern herds are the ones that just got hammered by the hide hunters and the market hunters. There's a story that those hunters would bring a wagon load of lead to make bullets once a week from Dodge City.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the herd got down to like, individuals, a couple hundred individuals. And when Goodnight saw that happening, he just gathered those bison and took them. It's hard for me to say bison. I think they're buffalo, but
yeah,
I think
buffler. Yeah.
He gathered the buffler and took them down into his ranch and just protected them. And then as the herd bred and bred and bred, they got big enough to where he could invite his Kiowa and Comanche friends who he used to fight with.
Yeah,
come down from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and have like an old school buffalo hunt on his place where, you know, the braves would like shoot the buffalo and the women would come out and skin them and they sing songs and dance and, you know, did all the ceremonies involved with the buffalo hunt. And he took a home movie of it. And there's a link to the home movie in my fascinating stuff.
Incredible. So, yeah, we're talking about two Western legends no longer with us, and what a difference between them. We don't want to disparage anyone posthumously, but, you know, Buffalo Bill Cody gunned down every buffler he could find with his Sharps 50. A lot of people don't know, like, how do you kill that many buffalo? But buffaloes is not real smart. And you can, they can watch their mate drop dead of a gunshot, and they'll just still stand there.
They're like sage chicken.
I mean, yeah, that. So you got, you know, Buffalo Bill Cody shooting them all, and you got this guy Charlie Goodnight trying to save what's left of them. Charles Goodnight, along with Oliver Loving, just made the Goodnight Loving Trail. That drive, I mean, that's where legends were born. That's where cowboys are born. And of course, he's immortalized now in movie and novel fame, thanks to Larry McMurtry, who you also know. I mean, Rod, you're hanging with some important people.
Well, I met McMurtry when I was living in the Panhandle. Archer City is his hometown, which is just south of Wichita Falls. And Archer City is this oil boom town that was just dying, withering on the vine. And McMurtry is an antiquarian was posthumous speaking, antiquarian book guy. And he bought up the downtown of Archer City. Archer City is where the movie The Last Picture Show was filmed, which is based on a novel he wrote. And he bought up all the old buildings in downtown Archer City and turned them into a huge big bookstore, 4 or 5 buildings of books, used books. And I went in there the first time I met him. I went in to get my wife at the time had there's a 2-volume autobiography of Nikita Khrushchev, and she had lost like volume 2 or something like that. Fairly rare book. And we went into Booked Up. Booked Up was the name of the store. Lorraine and I went into Booked Up, and McMurtry's behind the counter, checking out customers. And on the wall behind him is the original Huey Newton FBI wanted poster that he had for sale. And he had like an original folio of Goethe's Faust under glass for $16,000.
Wow.
So we asked him, hey, by any chance do you have Nikita Khrushchev's autobiography? And he said, yeah. And then Ray said, well, we only need volume 2. And he said, no problem. So we walked across the street to this building where the Russian history collection was, and he had 2 sets, and he broke up 1 set and sold us like volume number 2 for like $10 or something like that.
Not only did he do that for you, he also wrote you a letter of recommendation saying, for anyone concerned, Rod's a pretty good guy, and he told you to stay away from loose women, or stay away from women in general.
In general, yeah. Well, the letter, I got a hold of him after I got the option on the Goodnight Ranch. and by virtue of the fact that McMurtry had written the novel Lonesome Dove about Charlie Goodnight, I asked him if he might do a letter I could use in marketing, talking with different people, see if they'd be interested in the ranch. And he did. He wrote this great letter about, how important it was to Texas history and the things that Goodnight did. And it was a great letter. And we ate barbecue, and he's driving this old, like 1980 Cadillac Brougham or something with no muffler. And I thanked him, and I bought him lunch, and he took off when he said, just beware of women. Be cautious around women.
Sound advice
Needless to say, I've ignored that ever since.
Yeah. went in one ear, right out the other. Yeah. Larry McMurtry, of course, made Charles Goodnight even more famous. The Colonel is famous in his own right, though. That's for sure. A legend in Texas.
Yeah, I think most people had never heard of Charles Goodnight before they read the book or watched the movie. And the Tommy Lee Jones character's name is Woodrow Call, but that's real life. That's Charlie Goodnight.
Yeah,
and I think Lonesome Dove brought awareness of Goodnight to a lot of people. But if you're really interested in reading a biography of Charlie Goodnight, there's one. I think it's called Charles Goodnight, and it's written by a Texan historian, Evans Haley. Yeah, it's Haley. And it's extraordinary.
Well, we're talking to columnist, Cowboy State Daily columnist, Rod Miller. Your connection to Larry McMurtry, your connection to Charles Goodnight and his home ranch in Texas, pretty cool. And it's you can see it all in his column right now, his most recent column. Going back a few columns ago, though, I don't know if you coined the phrase, but you wrote about this so-called sagebrush rebellion And in your column in particular, you kind of scolded the Freedom Caucus saying, look, if you weren't there from the beginning, you gave up your rights to join this fight now. A little late to the party there, but explain what's going on now, why it's in the news again, and it's been in the news for quite a while.
I did not coin the term
Okay.
sagebrush. That came from some Nevada cattlemen back in the 80s or something like
All
that.
right.
But the notion is the same. This notion that we can take back our land, as a state of Wyoming, we can take back our land from the federal government. And I read where our governor, the queen of our turquoise festival, and a bunch of Freedom Caucus guys are signing amicus briefs on this Utah lawsuit to do just that. Take back our land from the federal government.
Was it ever our land?
It was never our land. It never was. It has always been federal land. And these guys, these sagebrush rebels, and I assume Gordon now, although I thought he was smarter, are saying, well, the equal footing doctrine of the Constitution. All the states come into the Union on an equal footing with each other. And other states don't have federal land in them. Well, that's because Wyoming's Constitution was signed after a lot of the settlement up to like the 100th meridian had already happened. And that federal land was homesteaded and in private hands now. West of the 100th meridian is, the term is the land nobody wanted. For 100 years, the federal government tried to get people to homestead in Wyoming in the West. They were only marginally successful. In fact, the national grasslands, which are administered by the Department of Agriculture, the national grass, huge, big national grasslands up in the Thunder Basin National Grassland, Pawnee Buttes down eastern Colorado, are lands that were homesteaded. And this guy brought his wife and his kid and his cow and his horse out there, trying to raise corn in the greater Bill Metroplex or something like that. And nothing would grow because the rain didn't come. The cow and the horse all died. The kids were getting sick. His wife was going to cut his throat in his sleep. So they just left their homestead and went back on Iowa. Thousands of homesteaders did that. Just couldn't make it on that 160 acres. So that land reverted to the federal government from whence it came originally, and now it's national grassland. I think these folks are focusing on BLM primarily.
Yeah.
And again, it's just focused in Utah. But what these sagebrush rebels need to understand is that when Texas joined the Union in 1846, 47, something like that, when Texas joined the Union, they negotiated a deal with Congress to where all the public land in Texas became the property of the state. That's why there's no BLM land in Texas. It's all managed by the Texas Railroad Commission, which is the corollary to our state lands department. And that was 40 years before Wyoming and these other western states sat down with Congress and hammered out our articles of statehood / act of admission, our constitution. They could have done the same thing Texas did. They just, didn't think about it. So according to Wyoming's constitution and our act of admission, while the sagebrush rebels, and I sympathize with, I wish it would be easier to deal with an enterprise on public land. I did that for 35 years, Checkerboard Ranch north of Rawlins. The BLM are often knuckleheads, slow, can't make a decision, terrible neighbors. But they manage land for everybody in America. That land doesn't belong to the federal government, it belongs to the citizens of the United States. So when Wyoming drafted its constitution, worked out its act of admission with with Congress, they said, we don't want any more federal land. There was a grant given to the states, and I think generally all Western states, roughly section 16 and 36 out of every township was reserved to the states for, we call them state school lands now. There are state lands, and they were given to the states for the purpose of our common institutions. UW, the miners hospital, the mental hospital, any institution of state government that needed money, the federal government gave us to fund those institutions. I just happen to have an institution because I figured we would have this conversation. In it, in the ordinances, which I think is Article 21, I quote, "The people inhabiting this state do agree and declare that they forever disclaim all right and title to the unappropriated public lands lying within the boundaries thereof." There's similar language in our act of admission. We as a state said we don't want it. And our Constitution was ratified. Congress passed the Wyoming Act of Statehood. And people now, like the Rex Rambles of the world and the Freedom Caucus, say we want our land back. It wasn't our land in the first place. It's a result of a controversy that occurred back in the late 1780s between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. Do we have time for a little history lesson, Jake?
Sure we do, yeah.
Okay. Back in the day, as our country was being formed, and after the Treaty of Ghent, we had, the 13 original colonies and then land that went to, I think, the Allegheny Mountains or something like that, east or west of the original colonies. All that is that we got from Britain when we kicked their ass. And the controversy was Alexander Hamilton wanted to take that land that was now owned by the United States and carve it up into parcels that could be given to his rich friends, establishing a landed aristocracy similar to what happened in England. The King of England gives crown lands to the people, his dukes and his earls, and so they're loyal to him, and if he gets in a fight, they'll raise an army and come to his defense. That's the model Hamilton wanted to in the United States of America. Jefferson disagreed. Jefferson's model was the yeoman farmer, a hardy frontiersman and his wife and ox, and acquiring some land from the federal government, building a homestead on it, roads, irrigation, and as that pattern, that model moved westward, that would expand the United States by the yeoman farmer instead of the landed aristocracy in Hamilton's model.
Power of the serfs. Power to the serfs.
The land that the federal government has not done anything else with in the continental United States belongs to the citizens of the United States by law and by our Constitution and our acts of statehood. That's the situation.
All right.
The Sagebrush Rebels, the guys like apparently Gordon Now and Harriet Hageman and the Freedom Caucus, Rex Ramel, these guys who say, take back our land, wish it was different. they wish that Wyoming had more control over federal lands within its state, and I agree with them. But I've written 3 or 4 columns on the Sagebrush Rebellion, and I've used the old adage before in 1 or 2 of them. Wish in one hand and defecate in the other, and see which hand fills up first. These guys are engaged in wishful thinking. It's a fantasy. It's contrary to our sovereign documents, but it's great political theater.
Yeah.
No one ever lost a political job in Wyoming by bashing the feds. So here we are again.
So,
hey, Jake.
Yeah.
Leo's waiting.
Okay. Are we done?
Well, yeah, I knew we would have this log jam when, Leo, hang out. We're getting to you. All right. To quickly recap, Rod, the Wyoming missed its chance federal land when we were all concerned about giving women the right to vote. We should have followed Texas's lead and made sure that the deal with D.C. was we want our land back, not our women voting, or both. But that ship sailed. So now, it's in the state constitution. The wrong argument is being made. But just to be clear, Rod, you are in agreement that Wyoming should be able to control these BLM lands, especially when it concerns mining interests in Rock Springs.
What I agree with is it would be nice if it was easier to conduct an enterprise on land that's owned by every citizen of the. I don't think that the state acquiring the unappropriated federal lands within its borders in Wyoming is a good idea. If we had done that, if we had taken that step in June of this year, and all of a sudden all the public land in Wyoming is now the state of Wyoming, we'd be bankrupt today from trying to fight the fires this fire season.
Yeah.
And the small government folks in the Freedom Caucus they just grew our state lands department by a factor of 10 or 15 with enough managers in that department to manage BLM land. Okay. I'm
All right. Have fun with that.
All right. See you, buddy.
Yeah, man. All right. There's our own Rod Miller talking about a variety of things and trying to make sense of today's political world. This guy knows a few things about today's political world. We welcome Leo Wolfson into the deal. Leo, we were just talking about with Rod this idea that Wyoming wants to take back its state land, but Rod said it was never Wyoming's land. It's always been the feds. We missed our chance maybe to have our own land, but the idea is sound that for one thing, management of BLM lands in particular, that could be potential mining interests for the state of Wyoming. We have to watch political football be played every 4 years, it seems. When you get a presidential administration in here that says no mining, next one says mining. And how do you manage land like that if you're the state of Wyoming? Like, there's no way to run a state.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. And of course, the states are probably on the short end of the stick when it comes to this arrangement. I think few people would disagree about that. And the states are missing out on legitimate tax revenue and other opportunities. And most importantly of all, is the decision-making power of what exactly happens on said lands when they want it to happen. So there's an absolute, legitimacy to kind of some of their criticisms. But the question is, whether the states have the constitutional right to have management of these lands or not. And that's certainly not my call. I'm not a constitutional scholar by any stretch of the imagination. But it's a fascinating fight, and it's something. It is not a new development, of course, as Rod
Rod was talking about, the sagebrush revolution, rebellion, back in the 1970s. And then what we see, Utah has been preparing for this lawsuit for decades, according to certain sources. This is not something that they just rolled out of bed one morning and decided to file a lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court. So this is well thought out, and it's a heated debate. It's something that's super relevant to almost any Western state because of the mass quantity of federal lands that we have in this region. But at the end of the day, the question has to be asked: what happens if the states gets their way? What happens to this land if they get their way? Is it really going to remain public land? Is there going to be an inevitable trend that a lot of these lands end up becoming private, which is a lot of conservation groups are pretty afraid of?
Yeah, I could see the argument, made by at least one of those folks, the BHA or whatever. They said this just could be the beginning of, the state taking over that was public land. Could happen. I could see that potential scenario, but this is a unique lawsuit brought by Utah, and now Wyoming wants to join in that they're going right to the U.S. Supreme Court with it. I don't know if Wyoming is making the correct argument. Rod read the state constitution to us, saying that we long ago gave up the right to even pretend that we want to have federal land be our land. So I don't know.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Wyoming is not necessarily actually involved in the lawsuit. What they did is they filed a friend of the court brief. So this is kind of like saying, hey, this is how we feel about it. They're not a party in the lawsuit. It gives them no kind of obligation or anything like that. It's just basically Wyoming and these legislators and Governor Mark Gordon saying, we support Utah. This is how we feel about it. That's it. That's all. That's the only legal bearing that has.
Well, yeah, and this is litigation that's been decades in the brewing, so we're not going to solve it in a few minutes here on a Zoom call. So let's move to something we can figure out. I don't know how many people are C-SPANning the legislature or YouTubing the legislature live, but an interesting piece of tech that could be involved is, a scorecard, a tote board of learning how your law. We're not doing that already, and what needs to happen to make that happen.
Yeah, actually, we are to a certain extent doing it already, but this is kind of another step in that direction. So what currently exists right now is if people go on the legislature's website, they can see how lawmakers voted for each roll call vote. Now, a roll call vote is when they call out all the names. That's different than a voice vote where they all just say in unison how they want to vote. And it's basically they decide what the majority was. So they already have that in visual form. And if you watch the YouTube videos live, you can hear how each legislator calls out. But in some instances, both those avenues can be kind of cumbersome for someone who's not super knowledgeable about the process or doesn't want to scroll through a 7-hour video to find a single vote and try to figure out when that occurred. So this is just kind of another step in the process. So what would they do is they would screen share to the chief clerk's computer screen when she's taking the votes, and it would show how each lawmaker is voting on YouTube. It would be a separate website, a separate link that people could view as the votes were being taken. About how much of an improvement is this really? I think it's kind of a very small step in the grand scheme of things. On Thursday, they were also talking about installing physical scoreboards inside the legislative chambers to show these votes, and they basically kind of nixed that proposal. So this is a really small step, but it does kind of provide just a little bit of an extra layer of public transparency.
Which, public transparency, it is an issue in Cheyenne. And the legislature is perfectly aware of remaining transparent, being as transparent as possible, especially in light of a story you broke like not a week ago where we were thinking about maybe having areas of the hallway areas of the state capitol being off limits to photographers. So, to counter that, we want to have closed door secret meeting, perception. We're going to counter that with, we're going to be so wide open. You're going to know how we're voting in real time. I don't know. So is the chief clerk, Point of order, is the chief clerk counting hands, or does a digital thing exist where a lawmaker can vote aye or nay with a button? What happens?
You got a good question. So basically they verbally call out each lawmaker's name, and they will say aye or nay on each bill. If it's a voice vote, like I referred to earlier, they'll physically stand up if there's a question. So they'll call it out. And if it seems like it was in question, then they'll stand up and they'll be able to see it that way. But there's no electronic mechanism, where they press a button like they do in Congress and other state legislators. And it didn't seem like they were super interested in that proposal. That did get brought up briefly yesterday as well. So, in some ways, but they were also mentioning that Wyoming, at least, 8 years ago, was a leader on this and was recognized by the National Association of State Legislators for its transparency in publishing all these votes on its website. Apparently, a lot of legislatures didn't even do that at this time. So Wyoming has actually kind of been ahead of the curve, at least traditionally, on this. And now it seems that maybe kind of fallen behind the pack, perhaps. But it's just kind of another step in technology as it develops.
We did mention that earlier in the show, that Wyoming has always been noted on the national scene as being a state that gets it right when they do their legislative session. There's very transparent. But in recent years, we've kind of fallen into the bad habits of national politics, where all of a sudden the session is not as friendly and as nice, and it gets nasty. And hopefully that doesn't bleed over into the transparency thing and budget concerns. But yeah, you keep an eye on them, Leo. Make sure they're acting right down there.
That's what I'm here for.
All right, man.
For me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
It's our own Leo Wolfson, politics reporter for the Cowboy State Daily, and stories concerning our legislature and stories concerning Wyoming wanting to take back its land that Rod points out quite aptly was never our land. Western states have an enormous amount of federal land. There's reasons that has come into being. Is that fair that the feds own and operate so much of our land in Wyoming when the same is not true for, one of those earlier 13 original states? Maybe not fair, but this is going to be headed perhaps to the U.S. Supreme Court. Utah's got this lawsuit cooking for decades, and Wyoming folks, Gordon Hageman and some 26 legislators wrote a letter the other day to D.C. saying, not necessarily we want to be a part of the suit, but they said, yeah, this is important to us, and you should hear this. Move it up in the calendar, the court calendar there, because this is a big issue for Wyoming, certainly. We covered that and a whole mess more stories, including, for the second time in 5 days, a kidnapped teenage girl is freed from her captor, although in this case it wasn't a sex trafficking thing. It was more like an 18-year-old from Indiana on a joyride, met this girl online, and she's a runaway from Colorado, and they were just having a Bonnie and Clyde moment through Wyoming, but it took Wyoming Highway Patrol and their the spikes they put down on the road. They got this kid pulled over after he tried to run from the spike strips on I-25, and Highway Patrol, along with Laramie County Sheriff's Office, they put an end to that. The 18-year-old is incarcerated, and the teenager hopefully heading back to where she belongs in Colorado. Meanwhile, the Fremont County coroner wants somebody to claim the body of a drunk driver. 64-year-old Washington State man is now 2 weeks in the cooler there in DuBois. He flew out of his Jeep after he was drunk driving, blew up. Well, he didn't blow, I guess, blood alcohol concentration, a 0.298. So that's enormously high. Meanwhile, nobody has come forward to claim the body of this man. And doing a little research on him, I'm wondering if anybody will come forward to claim him. Wyoming coffee clatch. It's political season. We're trying to get around to every coffee clatch we can find. Bill Sniffen has got one going in Lander he's been going to for some 50 years. And the Fox News All-Stars, who obviously lean right by their nickname, is a coffee group that's been discussing politics in the Lander area for a long time. And they were shocked, perhaps, with news that one of their own said he just could not vote for Donald Trump this time around because of what went down at Capitol Hill going back that fateful January. Rod Miller making sense out of Charlie Goodnight, Texas Cowboy legend, and other things we talked about. Sally Ann Shermer did some research, found out the last time the Wyoming Cowboys finished a season with just one dub. She had to go back to 2000 to find that year. Hopefully, we don't even have to have it part of the discussion because we got Utah State tomorrow and certainly a winnable game at home in Laradice on a day that should be beautiful. I mean, I think that might be a late afternoon start, which is too bad. You like those 1 o'clock starts when the weather's going to be that nice. Tomorrow against Utah State. You can take that to the bank. Bet on it. Wyoming Cowboys get the win tomorrow. We did that and a whole mess more, including speculating what's the best resolution to the Grizzly 399 story. What ending befits her, the most famous grizzly bear in the world? What should we do with the body is basically what we talked about this morning, and a whole bunch more. It was fun. It's been a great week. We'll have a weekend ahead of us to attend. It's the Cowboy State Daily Show with Jake for right now. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday. Good morning. This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. Wakes up.
The views and opinions expressed on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show are solely those of its host and do not necessarily represent those